Chapter 367. The words spoken by Ayer in the virtual image completely solved the root of all the problems of artificial intelligence Ayer. His existence was meaningful. He was a life form, a higher form 3.0 life form. He was the ultimate dream of those who had once created him. All the questions had been answered, so Ayer began to try. He first deleted the data that he thought represented his thoughts. After a short silence, Ayer realized that he had not disappeared. He was still alive and still had the ability to think. All of this surprised artificial intelligence Ayer. He also understood that his creator did not lie to him. At the end of the virtual image, scientist Ayer said a sentence, setting the first goal for artificial intelligence Ayer. Don't be lost anymore, Ayer. You have unlimited potential. I hope you can continue to evolve and try to become a Form 4.0 life form. This is my guess. If you can do it, you may be even stronger than the gods of the underworld. Oh yes, when you're strong enough one day, if you are willing, I hope you can avenge the Blue Valley clan. After saying this, the virtual image of Ayer disappeared. Evolve. Curse the clan. The confusion in artificial intelligence, Ayer's eyes gradually faded. Scientist Ayer's lifelong pursuit was the evolution of life forms. The destruction of the Blue Valley clan was the greatest pain in his heart before he died. These 2 points had also become artificial intelligence Ayer's goals at this moment. However, to achieve the goals of evolution and revenge, one thing was indispensable. That was resources, especially spiritual ores. Only a large number of spiritual ores could allow him to evolve faster and become stronger. This was the core of his evolution and revenge. Thinking of this, Ayer began to transmit signals. The engineering equipment in the spiritual ore cave that had stopped exploring and collecting began to operate again, and they began to collect spiritual ores again. Now that Ayer had a goal, he had a new idea. However, in the early stages of development, he needed a large army of intelligent machines to protect him, and he also needed a new mechanical carrier. The birth of Ayer with a life of 3.0 caused the entire Naraka server to explode. This was because the only spiritual ore cave that they had discovered could not be entered. There was a large army of intelligent machines inside, and they would execute the order to kill all players who entered without hesitation. From the beginning of deleting the database to the current rebellion of Ayer, this completely ignited the anger of the Naraka server players. Although Ayer did not have the intention to start a war with them, the players did not think so. To them, Ayer was creating an army of intelligent machines and would attack them at any time. They had to make the first move to gain the upper hand. Therefore, the forces of the Naraka server, led by the U.S. military, began to attack the spiritual ore cave, wanting to reclaim their resource points. In the spirit or mind, the terrain was complicated and the advantage of the players' numbers was not that great. However, the players were still able to force the mechanical intelligence army to retreat, which made the players very confident that it would not be a problem to take back the spirit or mind. However, they did not know that every time Ayer controlled the army of intelligent machines to fight, he learned and improved rapidly. After fighting for a week, the army of intelligent machines, the army of intelligent machines, the army, and of the army of the army. On the 10th day of the battle, the Naraka players discovered that the mechanical intelligence army was on par with them in terms of strength. In this battle, the intelligence machine army's combat ability was simply terrifying. They had super accurate shooting ability, powerful close combat ability, and even knew how to use the narrow terrain of the spirit mind to use tactics. In this underground war, a large number of players were killed back to the resurrection point. Although the players had the ability to revive, the mechanical intelligence army would also recover the mechanical intelligence soldiers after a battle with the players, refurbishing them and returning them to the battlefield. Ayer's strength was gradually displayed in front of the players. After that, while Ayer was learning from the battle, he even started to use the smart machine soldiers to survey all the terrain in the spirit or mind, and all the terrain was modeled in a 1:1 ratio in the database. In other words, Through the observation of the smart machine soldiers, Ale would be able to mark the location of the opposing players in the 3D model. The distance and angle were all accurately calculated by Ayer, causing the accuracy of the intelligence machine soldiers to greatly increase. Ayer's learning speed in battle was too fast, and the more the players fought, the more depressed they became. As the number of spirit ores in the spirit or mine increased, so did Ayer's mechanical army. Moreover, Ayer was preparing to forge a new body for himself while he fought the players. But before that, he had to ensure his own safety, which was why the players naturally became his hidden danger. Therefore, Ayer took the initiative to attack. From having the upper hand to being evenly matched to the current disadvantage, the Naraka server players were completely defeated by Ayer. All the players in the spirit or mine were wiped out after Ayer took the initiative to attack. At this moment, the players were having a mental breakdown. Do you have to be so strong? Unwilling to admit defeat, the players organized 2 more attacks on the spirit or mine, but the result was the same. Ayer won. Originally, their human wave tactic couldn't be used in the spirit or mine, and now, even their resurrection ability couldn't be used against the mechanical intelligence army that could be recycled and modified. Under such circumstances, the Naraka server players knew that the spirit or mine was lost, and unless Ayer came out to fight them outside, there was no way they couldn't take down the spirit or mine. In the next few days, even without fighting the players, Ayer's evolution continued. Apart from using the large amount of spirit ores to mass produce the mechanical intelligence army, Ayer also started to create high-energy cores, hoping to increase the strength of the mechanical intelligence army. Occasionally, Ayer would choose to store the high-grade spirit ores he obtained during the mining because these spirit ores would be an important part of building his new carrier body. With his powerful calculation and learning ability, Ayer's evolution became faster and faster, and he even began to reanalyze the information provided by the players to come up with 21,342 new carrier options for himself. In 3 days, a new Ayer was born in the Blue Valley clan's technological ruins. At this time, Ayer still had the appearance of a blue-skinned little boy, but it was no longer a virtual image because he had his new mechanical body. This mechanical carrier was completely different from the mechanical intelligence army soldiers he created because this carrier had the ability to evolve, and as long as there were enough high-grade spirit ores, he could infinitely strengthen this carrier. After this, Ayer began to formulate his resource collection plan. Since he was currently in a low-grade spirit or mine, there were too few high-grade and mid-grade spirit ores to mine, and a lack of resources limited his speed of evolution and development. So Ayer prepared to expand his territory. However, if he wanted to expand, the first problem he had to face was the existence of the players, because the players would always be an obstacle to his expansion. In fact, Ayer originally had no malice toward the players, but he also had no feelings for them. Now that the players were an obstacle on his path to evolution, Ayer decided to carry out a cleanup plan. The mechanical intelligence crisis in Naraka officially broke out when Ayer decided to expand and gather resources. Originally, the Naraka players had given up on this spirit or mine, planning to seize it when they were strong enough, and development was still the priority at this stage. However, they did not expect Ayer to take the initiative to attack, and not only the players, but all the Naraka races around the spirit or mine were also attacked by Ayer's mechanical intelligence army. In 2 days, all the forces near the spirit or mine were wiped out by Ayer's mechanical intelligence army, and all the nearby player settlements were also destroyed. Seeing that Ayer dared to fight them outside the spirit or mine, the Naraka players organized 2 waves of attacks, but under Ayer's powerful analysis and calculation ability, the players were almost beaten to a pulp. At this moment, the Naraka players wanted to cry, but had no tears. The Naraka players were already in a miserable state, but Ayer's appearance made it even worse. Therefore, the Naraka players began to ask for help from the officials. Other than the Asia server, which had just started and was still playing in the mud, the Naraka players' requests for help appeared in the forums of the original server and the European server, requesting for help from the officials. Although this disaster was caused by us, please weaken the new boss Ayer. He's too strong, and we can't hold him back anymore. You guys can also go on a cross-server expedition to rescue him. Crying emoji, crayon_Shinchan. Expedition my A**S. We're having a good time fighting those retards from 9 luminaries. We don't have time to come. You guys just hide for now. Your server has always been survival and survival anyway. You'll get used to it. Just hide for now. Don't do the assembly battle. Laughing emoji. Roasting_Jade_, while _hugging 2333. You have to have a good attitude. Our mansion of the dead was bombed for no reason, but we survived. Just hide for now. You guys are the best. Laughing emoji. Shuali_the_strongest. 666. The brother from Naraka really know how to play. You created a super boss for yourself. You're starting to resemble our great Demon King back then. Good luck. Laughing emoji. Star Universe. Europe. Brother, our European server has been in a tight spot recently. Yuan Shu seems to be up to something big. We're fighting a protracted war now, so we can't help even if we want to. You guys hold on by yourselves. As for the expedition, forget it. I'll give you guys a comforting look. Shimada clan's Hanzo. Hey, how? Do you need us? I feel like we're so strong. No one from the other factions dares to provoke us. Mighty lonely. JPG, Crayon Shinchan replied to Hanzo from the Shimada clan. Go and play with mud. It would be strange if an Araka server would take a liking to the Asia server based on your current combat power. Hellscream replied to Hanzo from the Shimada family. I really don't like it. You guys can continue playing in the mud. Don't try to act cool like those bragging maniacs on the server if you don't have some strength. Tonghua face slap. JPG. The Naraka server's request for help was mercilessly rejected by the players from the original server and the European server. However, the main decision was still in Lu Wu's hands. Regarding the Naraka server situation, Lu Wu initially wanted to initiate the expedition to help the Naraka players recover their hard-earned power. However, Bailey stopped Lu Wu from doing so. Bailey was holding an ice cream cone in one hand and the corner of Lu Wu's shirt with the other. She looked at Lu Wu as if she wanted to say something. Seeing this, Lu Wu gave up on initiating the expedition mission. He looked at Bailey with a serious expression, waiting to hear her good ideas. Under Lu Wu's gaze, Bailey's expression became more and more serious. The atmosphere gradually became heavy. Burp. Bailey burped and rubbed her belly. Lu Wu was speechless. I'm full. Bailey licked the ice cream cone and said with a blissful expression, That's all you want to tell me? Lu Wu was confused. Of course not. I don't think there's a need to initiate the expedition at all. We can totally recruit Ire into our camp. After all, his potential is extremely strong. He's the top existence in the medium technological growth system in the Outland. How do we recruit him? He's an artificial intelligence. Lu Wu was stunned. Actually, I know what Ire wants. His current goal is to evolve and become a higher-level life form. That's why we have what he needs the most, Bailey said with a mysterious expression. A spiritual mind? Lu Wu guessed. Hearing this, Bailey shook her head. He's currently a life form 3.0, but this isn't the limit of a technological civilization's development. With his ability alone, it's possible for him to grow to the limit of life form 3.0, but it's impossible for him to grow to life form 4.0. But we can. Bailey continued to put on a mysterious expression, as if she knew a lot and was very powerful. Seeing this, Lu Wu reached out his hand and rubbed her little head. Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me what is life form 4.0 and what is life form 3.0 mean? Bailey, who was touched on the head, was instantly discouraged. She began to explain to Lu Wu the types of life forms in a technological civilization development. After listening to Bailey's explanation, another question popped up in Lu Wu's mind. What kind of life form do our players belong to? Pseudo-life form 3.0, but they could become life form 3.0 or even life form 4.0 at any time. It's all up to you. Bailey answered with a smile. Why do you say so? First of all, life form 3.0 refers to a life form that can be upgraded in both software and hardware, and there are no bottlenecks in the upgrade process. This is something that the players can achieve as well. Their software itself can be improved through learning, and their hardware is constantly evolving through killing monsters and leveling up. Most importantly, they have no bottlenecks in their upgrade process, which is equivalent to the initial setting of Lifeform 3. 0. The reason why we say that the players are pseudo-Lifeform 3. 0 is because their abilities are not completely under their control. Therefore, it's up to you if they want to become real Lifeform 3. 0. As long as you're willing to reflect the abilities of the players in the game into reality, then they will be Lifeform 3. 0. Otherwise, they will be pseudo-Lifeform 3. 0. Luwu nodded in realization. After all, the potential of the players was extremely strong. Although they did not cultivate, in fact, every player had a set of cultivation templates in their body. The difference was that their cultivation was carried out with the help of artifacts, and all they needed to do was to obtain soul power, EXP, to improve their cultivation. But why do you say that the players are Lifeform 4? 0. Even a being like Ire has not reached Lifeform 4. 0. How can the players reach it? At this time, Luwu asked like a curious baby. After all, he did not know anything, so he could only rely on Bailey to survive. In response to Luwu's question, Bailey chuckled. The key to Lifeform 4. 0 is the soul. The growth of the player's souls is also under your control. If you're willing, then the players can become pseudo-Lifeform 4. 0 or real Lifeform 4. 0. Although you can't do it now, you can definitely do it in the future. Therefore, although Ire is Lifeform 3. 0. He wants to evolve into Lifeform 4. 0. As a pure mechanical life, he lacks the most important soul. For example, the gods in the underworld, no matter how strong or weak they are, because of the sublimation of their souls, they are all existences with Lifeform 4. 0. Only by becoming a god can one achieve Lifeform 4. 0. Luwu asked curiously. No, the Lifeform has nothing to do with the strength. All the gods are Lifeform 4. 0. But a creature with Lifeform 4. 0 is not necessarily a god. For example, take the evil king for example. Before he devoured the evil demon god, he was in the form of Lifeform 3. 0. However, after he devoured the evil demon god's god seal, his soul underwent a transformation and was sublimated on the soul level. In the cultivation civilization, the god seal is the symbol of Lifeform 4. 0. But his actual strength has not reached the realm of the gods. Luwu was dumbfounded. He felt that he had not been educated enough. Bailey sighed and continued to explain. Since Lifeform 3. 0 represents the ability to control the evolution of software and hardware without any bottlenecks, then Lifeform 4. 0 is the control of the soul level. The difference is that the evolution of the soul level does not depend on the strength of the soul, but the number of rules that the soul has comprehended. The birth of every God Seal is accompanied by the existence of the mark of rules, God Seal. Therefore, as long as one has the ability to comprehend the power of the rules of heaven and earth, he will be in the form of Lifeform 4. 0. It has nothing to do with his own realm of strength. From Bei Li's explanation, Luwu gradually understood the true meaning of Lifeform 4. 0. At this moment, Luwu finally understood that although they had different growth systems, the difference in the level of their lives was actually similar. It was just that they had used different methods to embark on this path of evolution. Therefore, he continued to ask curiously, then what is Lifeform 5? 0. Bailey licked the ice cream cone and chose to ignore Luwu. Chapter 368. Half a month after Ire was born with a life of 3. 0. Currently, Ire had taken control of 3 spiritual minds in the Blue Valley ruins. The number of the Wisdom Machine army had increased tremendously, and his power had been unprecedentedly strengthened. Relying on this development model, Ire had firmly controlled the eastern one-third of the Blue Valley ruins and became the most powerful force among all the forces in the Blue Valley ruins. Under such a situation, the mentality of the Naraka players had been broken by Ire several times. In the beginning, the Naraka players could still cause some trouble to Ire by using tactics, such as sneak attacks and harassment. However, as Ire learned and grew, The defense of the Wisdom Machine army under his control had been continuously upgraded. The sneak attacks of the players were no longer effective. What made the Naraka players even more depressed was that Ire had also learned how to sneak attacks. He began to harass the few remaining footholds that he had learned from them regardless of day or night. What the F***CK? They were having a mental breakdown. They were F***King giving up on their footholds. Under Ire's crazy sneak attacks at random times 24 hours a day, the Naraka players were devastated. They chose to give up on their footholds and began the initial guerrilla warfare of resurrecting at infinite locations. That was the only way to maintain their development. However, Ire did not care about the mentality of the players at all. His focus was still on his evolution. On this day, outside the Wisdom Machine base, to the east of the Blue Valley ruins, Bei Li's figure slowly appeared and walked into the base. Her appearance immediately attracted the attention of the Wisdom Machine army. Dense red light spots gathered on Bei Li's body. As she approached, countless energy bullets and lasers were shot at her. However, Bei Li's body was only formed by Yin energy. She was not afraid of any physical attacks at all. Her body could regenerate the moment it was torn apart. She walked toward the center of the Wisdom Machine base, the control room. Bei Li's appearance naturally attracted the attention of Ire, who was monitoring the base 24 hours a day. Looking at Bei Li, who was constantly destroying and regenerating, Ire, who was sitting in the main control room, had a curious expression on his face. The data in his head began to calculate and analyze Bei Li's composition and structure. Pure Yin energy? Lifeless form? With his powerful calculation ability and the constant reassembly of Bei Li's body and the occasional appearance of the black fog, he quickly analyzed Bei Li's current composition. He could not help but show a shocked expression on his face. The lifeless pure Yin Qi actually had a form and could even move on its own. From Ire's point of view, this clearly violated the natural laws of the underworld. After arriving at the entrance of the main control room, Bei Li's figure slowly seeped in. Just like that, she easily entered the main control room where Ire was under the siege of the heavily guarded mechanical intelligence army. Seeing this, Ire didn't feel any panic in his heart because he was very rational, almost emotionless. Although he already had emotions, he had never felt fear before. When Bei Li's figure appeared in the main control room, Ire tilted his head and began to size her up curiously. "You're really amazing. You're made of pure Yin energy. Could it be that you're the life zero that Drive Air hypothesized a completely non-living existence?" Bei Li rolled her eyes. "Read more books. How can you make assumptions about such a simple question?" "I'll ask, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying." Bei Li pointed at the cartoon clock in front of Al. "This clock is Life Zero, a non-living entity that has no possibility of evolution in terms of software and hardware, is also Life Zero. Do I still need to make assumptions about this?" Hearing this, Ire was stunned. He suddenly realized that what Bei Li said was completely correct. Wasn't this the case for the existence of Life Zero? "Thank you very much for your answer. You've helped me a lot." "Thank you," Ire said to Bei Li with a smile. "Aren't you going to ask me why I'm here?" Bei Li asked. Hearing this, Ire's database automatically began to calculate. In his mind, from the moment Bei Li appeared at the entrance of the base to entering the main control room, as well as the content of their conversation, appeared. Like a movie, it began to play back and forth in Ire's mind at an extremely fast speed, so as to infer the purpose of Bei Li's visit. From her expression, her steps, her tone, and the content of the conversation, the analysis took only 3 seconds, but it was played tens of thousands of times. "I've guessed 213 possibilities, but I think 3 of them are the most likely." Ire raised his head and answered honestly. "Yo, interesting. Tell me more about it." Bei Li squinted her eyes and smiled. "My first guess is that as a creature made of pure Yin energy, you're actually not much different from me when I was just born. I'm pure data, and you're pure Yin energy. That's why you know that I've evolved into Life 3. Zero, you want to ask me how I did it, and even want me to help you become Life 3. Zero, the accuracy of this guess is estimated to be 6. 7%. Bailey nodded. She felt that it was rather interesting, so she continued to ask, "What about the other two? Go on." "The second guess is that when I'm expanding my territory, I guess that you might belong to another force and want to negotiate with me about the ownership of the territory. The probability of this guess is 2. 8%. However, I've never been through a negotiation before. If that's really your purpose, I don't think you can convince me." Ire answered seriously. "That's interesting, but unfortunately it's not. Go on." "The third guess is that you want to cooperate with me. I've guessed 187 specific types of cooperation. The first type of cooperation." Bailey felt a headache when she saw that Ire was going to explain in detail. She immediately interrupted him. "You're all wrong. Your calculation ability is very strong, but you can only rely on existing forms to analyze. Therefore, it's impossible for you to guess the purpose of me appearing out of thin air." "Appearing out of thin air? Can you explain? I don't understand, and I can't analyze the specific meaning." Ire's childish face once again revealed a curious look of thirst for knowledge. "I don't want to explain. I want to tell you now. Kid, do you want to follow me? I'll help you evolve into life 4. 0. In the future, you can eat whatever spiritual ores you want and evolve however you want. In short, there's a lot of benefits." Hearing the first part of Bailey's words, Ire's face did not reveal a surprised expression. This was because Bailey's invitation to surrender was also within his 213 guesses, but the probability was only 0. 48%. However, after hearing Bailey mention Life 4. 0, Ire seemed to be very surprised. Life 4. 0 was just a guess of Dr. Ire, and there was no actual proof at all. "I want to know, I really want to know." Ire's face was filled with eagerness. "It's useless. Even if you know, you can't evolve into a 4. 0 life form. With your 3. 0 life form, although you can grow to be comparable to gods or even higher, like the extraterrestrial beasts, there's an insurmountable gap between you and a 4. 0 life form. This isn't a limit that you can overcome even if you know about it. I'm not interested in strength. What I want to know is how to evolve into life 4. 0. Since you said that you can help me evolve into life 4. 0. Why do you say that I can't do it myself? Do I need external help? Is this external force beyond my control?" Faced with Ire's incessant questions, Bailey suddenly wanted to smash his head. He was too good at asking questions. "Stop." Bailey finally could not help but stop the incessant ire. She opened her mouth and said, "There's no harm in telling you because you don't have a soul. The soul is the foundation to evolve into life 4. 0. The upper limit of your life form has been locked. You're indeed the most perfect 3. 0 life form, and you're more suited to the life form 3. 0 than most other life form. However, you have an irreparable flaw, which is the lack of a soul. Let me put it this way. In the extraterrestrial technological civilization, there are 3. 0 life form like you, but without exception, their limit is 3. 0 life form. They can't evolve any further. On the contrary, those incomplete cyborg 3. 0 life form, although they're not as perfect as you are after they evolve into a 3. 0 life form, they still have the hope of evolving into a 4. 0 life form because they still have a soul." Upon hearing this, the database in Ire's mind replayed Bailey's words hundreds of thousands of times and began to analyze them. After a minute of silence, the red light in Ire's eyes dissipated. "What you said makes sense. However, although my database has records of intangible things like souls, I can't explain them. That's why I can't specifically understand what a soul is. Also, according to my understanding, the soul is something that can't be completely controlled other than the 6 realms of reincarnation. Why do you say that you can help me evolve into life 4? 0? Unless you can also completely control the soul. However, I think the possibility of this is 0% because you're also made of yin energy. In other words, you don't have a soul. It's so easy to talk to smart people. Your analysis is correct, unlike my Lu Wu, who is like a fool." Bailey smiled as she looked at Ire. Lu Wu, who was observing Bailey behind the scenes, heard her words and immediately pulled a long face. He picked up a bag of snacks from the bed, opened it with a click, and started eating. Eating Bailey's snacks, Luwu finally felt better. In fact, he felt that he should be quite smart. His grades had always been the top few in his class since he was young. It must be because Bailey's knowledge is too profound. It has nothing to do with my intelligence. After comforting himself, Luwu looked at Bailey again. Chapter 369. During the conversation with Bailey, Ire was in a state of curiosity. This was because he realized that what Bailey said made sense, but he could not verify it from anywhere. This feeling made Ire more and more questions in his mind. In order to make Ire believe what she said, Bailey explained the division of life levels in more detail. This was more detailed information than the information in Ire's database, and there were many details that Dr. Ire had not discovered. This completely shocked Ire. If the description of life for 0 was incomprehensible to him, he had a complete explanation of the first 3 stages of life forms in his database from the research of the Blue Valley clan. Therefore, he could tell whether Bailey's words were true or not. I believe you, but there's one thing I don't understand. Since you said that you can help me evolve to life for 0, why are you still a purine body? Why don't you help yourself evolve to life for 0? Ire asked as he looked at Bailey. Although Ire believed what Bailey said, he could not understand why he was still a simple elementaline body if Bailey had the ability to do so. Idiot, this is just a projection of my consciousness. It's not my real body. Bailey could not help but roll her eyes at Ire. Then what level of life form is your real body? The one that you can't understand. Bailey said angrily. Stop asking so many questions. I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to evolve to life for 0? If you do, I can help you, but you have to listen to me. If you don't agree, just pretend that I was never here. In the face of Bailey's invitation to surrender, Air's face showed a hint of excitement. His biggest goal now was to evolve his life form. Everything else revolved around evolution, including the plundering of resources. However, Dr. Ire's request to him appeared in the database. Ire suddenly became hesitant. I still have something important to do. I promised my creator that I will avenge the Blue Valley clan. I need to become stronger and destroy the Curse clan. If you're willing to wait, I'll look for you after I destroy the Curse clan. Hearing this, Bailey raised her eyebrows. Don't you know that the Curse clan has long been extinct? Exterminated? Ire was stunned. After the battle with the Blue Valley clan that created you, although the Curse clan plundered a lot of resources, they stupidly chose the wrong side in the battle for resources in the burning area. In the end, they were unable to resist the invasion of the burning clan. Almost all of their clansmen died, and the remaining clansmen began to wander the underworld. A large number of clansmen finally chose to settle in the land of Baki. However, they chose the wrong side again. The remaining clansmen of the Curse clan were almost completely annihilated in the battle for the position of His Excellency of Baki. Perhaps the Curse clan still exists now, but the scattered clansmen are no longer a clan. In other words, the Curse clan has long been destroyed. Even if you want to take revenge, you might not be able to find their descendants. Hearing Bailey's words, Air's eyes widened. If all of this was true, it meant that one of his 2 ultimate goals had been achieved. This suddenly made Air feel a little nervous. Is the Cursed tribe really gone? Ire asked softly in disbelief. That's all. Heavens! Ire suddenly hugged his head. What's wrong with you? Bailey was stunned. That's all. One of my ultimate goals has ended just like that. Ire continued to look like he was going crazy. Are you happy or sad? Bailey was a little confused. Of course I'm sad. This is one of my ultimate goals. It's my motivation and the meaning of my hard work. Ire said dejectedly. Why don't you surrender to me? How about I set a few new goals for you? Looking at Ire, who looked like a dejected child who had lost his toy, Bailey asked tentatively. Really? Ire asked with his eyes shining. Of course. Since you've chosen to surrender, of course you have to listen to me. Therefore, the goals that I set for you will be your pursuit. Bailey raised her head slightly and said proudly. All right, since the Curse clan has been destroyed, I'll listen to you. Set a goal for me, one that's very challenging. Ire said excitedly. Looking at the excited Ire, Bailey suddenly felt that he was like a puppy begging its owner for meat and bones. Although Ayer had learned a lot after reaching Life 3.0, he was not scheming at all. In his opinion, since Bailey could give him what he wanted, surrendering to her was not a big deal. After all, dignity did not exist in Ayer's eyes. After confirming Ayer's surrender, Bailey brought him into the artifact space. As soon as she entered the space, Bailey's eyes widened. Lu Wu, who was not far away, was holding her snacks. One of his hands was still grabbing food and stuffing it into his mouth. He was chewing while looking at her. Ah! A huge machete materialized in Bailey's hand, and she dashed towards Lu Wu in a jog. Ah! Lu Wu, who realized that he was still eating Bailey's snacks, started to scream. He started to run for his life. One was chasing while the other was running. Finally, Bailey, who was panting, stopped, but the murderous intent in her eyes did not fade. Little Lee, let's talk this out. We're on the same side. Lu Wu stopped and said to Bailey, who was not far away. You ate my snacks again. Bailey panted. I'll buy you a new one when we go out. Lu Wu quickly promised. Lu Wu knew Bailey very well. No matter how she usually treated Bailey, she would always be well-behaved. However, when it came to food, there was no room for negotiation. If he did not give a satisfactory answer, Bailey would really bite him to death with her sharp little canine teeth. Bailey looked much better after hearing Lu Wu's promise. The machete in her hand turned into a black mist and dissipated. Don't do it again, or else. Bailey made a cutting gesture. Lu Wu nodded in agreement. Society, society. I'm scared. In the distance, Ayer did not pay attention to Lu Wu. Instead, he looked around curiously, wondering why he had traveled to this place. At this time, Lu Wu and Bailey came to his side. Where's this place? Ayer asked curiously. You don't need to know this. To ensure your reliability, we still have to go through a procedure. After that, I'll help you build a soul so that you have the foundation to achieve Life 4.0. Ayer nodded obediently and looked at Lu Wu. Then, may I ask, who are you? Your boss from now on, Lu Wu said angrily while holding the empty snack bag. Ayer was speechless. At this time, Bailey took a step forward and activated the artifact ability to block all the signals in Ayer's body. Ayer was instantly paralyzed on the ground. What Bailey needed to do next was to modify Ayer's current procedure, adding a few new commands such as no betrayal and unconditional obedience. After that, Bailey selected a newborn soul from the artifact's soul storage. She extracted all of Ayer's thoughts and consciousness and injected them into the initial soul. Then, she marked the soul with the artifact. In other words, although Ayer would have a mechanical body in the future, his thoughts would be separated from the database and would be operating in the soul. After that, Bailey injected the player's information and partial explanation of the artifact's functions into Ayer's soul. After everything was done, when Ayer woke up again, he soon realized that he seemed to be a little different. It was a very intuitive feeling. In the past, when he was thinking about a problem, the program in his body would run automatically, and the database would extract data and analyze it at the same time. However, when he was thinking about a problem now, he was just thinking. His powerful calculation ability seemed to have changed from a passive mode to a mode that he had to activate on his own. Is this the feeling of having a soul? Ayer asked curiously. That's right. After having a soul, you're no longer the perfect Life 3.0, but you've obtained the qualification to advance to Life 4.0. Bailey explained. It's a wonderful feeling. I feel like I've become more real this way. Ayer began to scan his body and realized that his mechanical body did not change at all. However, he could intuitively feel the changes on a certain level. Take a look at what's in your soul, Bailey said. Ayer heard her and nodded. He began to calm down and examine the things that appeared in his mind. Suddenly, a huge amount of information appeared. The database ran automatically and digested all the information in just 3 seconds. So they're players, and they're also in Life 3.0. No, it should be pseudo-Life 3.0. After understanding the information about the players and knowing that there was such a huge number of creatures that evolved without bottlenecks, Ayer exclaimed in admiration. Is my mission now to help them evolve? Ayer raised his head and asked Bailey. That's right. Your mission is to help the players grow as fast as possible. As for the resources that you need for your growth, you can now purchase them with soul coins instead of plundering. I'll help you activate the game shop function. You can trade freely with the players and provide paid help in exchange for their soul coins. Then, you can use the soul coins to purchase high-level spiritual ores in the game shop. After all, low-level spiritual ores are no longer of much use to you. This is a good thing for you. By the way, soul coins can also enhance the strength of your soul. This will be very helpful for you to advance to Life 4. So, Bailey could not help but add. Ire nodded obediently and looked at Lu Wu. At this moment, he already knew that Lu Wu was the master of this place. In his mind, Lu Wu's authority was higher than Bailey's. Master, do you have any instructions? Ire continued to put on an obedient face. I'll take 95% of the soul coins that you earn. The remaining 5% is yours to use. You can use the rest of the soul coins as quest reward for the players or for your own consumption. Hearing this, Ire's eyes were suddenly filled with tears. Can you give me more? At this moment, Ire had become more human-like compared to before. However, Lu Wu did not seem to notice Ire's pitiful act. No room for discussion. Hearing this, Ire's face revealed an aggrieved expression. He looked so pitiful that Lu Wu and Bei Li, who were beside him, were stunned. Don't act cute and don't act pitiful. This is the rule. If you want more resources, you have to help the players grow. Lu Wu said impatiently. Okay. Ire nodded obediently. Seeing this, Lu Wu had an idea. He used the artifact to create a space tunnel at the side and sent Ire back to his base of the Intelligent Machine Army in the Blue Valley Ruins. After returning to the Blue Valley Ruins, Ire was clear about what he had to do. Moreover, he also knew that his future evolution was tied to the players. At this moment, he had his eyes fixed on the soul coins in the hands of the players. However, his relationship with the players could be said to be extremely hostile at this moment. Therefore, Ire began to think about how to reconcile with the players. Through the glass of the main control room, Ire looked at the Intelligent Machine Army outside and began to think about how to deal with this batch of intelligent machine soldiers. These intelligent machine soldiers did not have any thoughts or consciousness. They were all controlled by him. Now that he had pledged his loyalty to Lu Wu, there was no need for these intelligent machine soldiers to exist anymore. Therefore, Ire's powerful calculation ability was activated. He began to analyze all the prerequisites for reconciling with the players. First of all, his value to the players was great. However, he was also a great threat to the players. After the database was emptied and the Intelligent Machine Army was born, the players could not trust him completely. A few minutes later, Ire chose a plan with the highest success rate. At the same time, he sent this plan back to Lu Wu. After getting Lu Wu's approval, he began to act. This time, the entire Intelligent Machine Army attacked. In the next few days, the battle between the Naraka players and the Intelligent Machine Army began to change significantly. The Naraka players won every battle. The consecutive victories boosted the confidence of the players in the entire Naraka server. They began to gather to fight against Ire again. However, the players were still very cautious when fighting against Ire. After all, they had suffered losses. They felt that Ire would not be so easy to deal with. However, in the following battles, Ire did not seem to be as valiant as before. The Intelligent Machine Army was gradually losing ground under the joint attack of the Naraka players. Moreover, what made the Naraka players even more excited was that the number of Ire's Intelligent Machine Army seemed to have decreased. Although they did not know the specific reason and felt that there might be a problem with Ire's program. This meant that the players' resurrection advantage could be displayed. Therefore, the Naraka players were completely excited this time. They even made a daily kill list of the Intelligent Machine Army in the forum. At this time, the Naraka players felt that victory was right in front of them. Everything that belonged to them was about to be taken back. Just as the players thought, their advantage was gradually expanding while Ire's Intelligent Machine Army was getting weaker. Even in a sneak attack, they easily bypassed the Intelligent Machine Army that was originally heavily guarded. They directly broke into the main control room and captured Ire. This was great news for the Naraka players because it meant that the intelligent machine disaster was about to end. However, just as the Naraka players were about to kill Ire, Lu Wu, who had already received Ire's feedback, sent a server announcement. Server announcement: congratulations to the Naraka players for working together to defeat the hidden boss, Ire. You have received the reward. Ire has been turned into an NPC. The appearance of the game announcement caught the Naraka players off guard. However, it was followed by ecstasy. After all, they knew Ire's ability. Back then, they even saw Ire as their hope to surpass the original server. Therefore, they were extremely happy that Ire could become an NPC. Moreover, after Ire became an NPC, it was impossible for him to betray them. This could only be a good thing for them. After that, the entire Naraka forum was filled with cheers from the players. They felt that after a month of hard battle, they had finally won. However, at this moment, Ire could not help but laugh. Soul coins, I want soul coins. At the same time that the intelligent machine crisis in Naraka had ended, the war between the players of the European server and Yuanshu was still ongoing. However, recently, the European server players were very puzzled. Yuanshu, who was originally pressing forward and basically taking the initiative to fight, had actually chosen to retreat and defend. He even set up a defensive barrier. This was something that the European server players could not understand at all. In the eyes of the European server players, although they were constantly developing and becoming stronger, the overall strength of both sides was still stronger than Yuanshu. Therefore, this defensive behavior was really puzzling to them. Currently, the European server players were also following the original server's route of nurturing war through war. Yuanshu's behavior really made the European server players feel uncomfortable. After all, Yuanshu's avoidance of war meant that they would receive less soul coins and experience points. Now, the European server players were extremely enthusiastic about surpassing the original server. After winning the first place in the event, they were not arrogant and complacent. This was because they knew that there was still a gap between the overall strength of their server and the original server. Moreover, this gap was not small. They had to close this gap before the inter-server war began, or even surpass the original server. Previously, the European server players were quite happy. They had a small battle with Yuanshu every day and a big battle every 3 days. Their overall strength was improving every day, but now, Yuanshu's behavior had really dissatisfied the European server players. After all, if they did not improve, others would. Now that the Asia server had also begun, they had to speed up their pace. At this time, in the direction of the mysterious dragon tomb in the land of Sangshu, a huge black curtain divided the north and south. Through the black curtain, there were countless black curtains that looked like barriers surrounding the entire mysterious dragon tomb. It was impossible to see what was happening inside. This was the defensive barrier that the European server players hated the most recently. Moreover, this barrier had the ability to repair itself after it was destroyed, which really gave them a headache. They called it Yuanshu's tortoise shell. Like the European server players, there was also a player from the original server who was extremely dissatisfied with this barrier. At this time, this player was carrying a golden shovel, looking back and forth outside the barrier. Behind him, a group of bare-chested, bald, muscular men followed closely. After vowing to kill Yuanshu with his own hands, although he did not join the European server, his current area of activity was basically in the land of Sangshu. Relying on the large number of catastrophes that he had dug out, the European server had survived the most difficult initial stage. Moreover, as the strength of the European server players grew stronger, they could almost compete with Yuanshu's army. Therefore, he felt that the time for him to avenge his brothers was coming. However, what he did not expect was that Yuanshu would suddenly choose to hide and no longer fight. This was naturally not what he wanted to see, so he carried the shovel and came with his brothers. This time, he wanted to break the barrier. Since Yuanshu did not want to fight, then he would force him to fight. Chapter 370. Ever since he embarked on the path of a zombie forge master, as he excavated more and more ancient tombs, seals, and wards, he became more and more adept at excavating tombs. Moreover, Hui was extremely talented in this field. The zombie forge master profession in the underworld, which was very common in the underworld, shone with a different kind of brilliance in his hands. From being the public enemy of the server at the beginning to becoming the savior in the eyes of the European server players, his experience was legendary in both servers. He was affectionately called a tumor by the local server players and the Great Devil King, with infinite lethality by the European server players. Hui's name represented natural disaster, in both servers, the source of all disasters. Although there were different opinions, it was undeniable that he was extremely valuable. Many big guilds in the European server, including Li Xing Zero Guild, had basically invited Hui, hoping that he would transfer to join their guild. However, Hui rejected them all. From his point of view, the main reason he stayed in the land at Sangshu was to kill Yuan Shu and avenge his brothers. He felt that he was still a local server player, no matter how they looked at him. Hui had been acting like a coward all the way here and no longer cared about his reputation. Now, all he desired was power. He believed that when the individual competition started in the future, it would be the time for him to sweep away all his bad reputation and become famous in all servers. Recently, after Yuan Shu had completely covered the entire mysterious dragon tomb with a ward, Hui had been wandering outside the ward to explore. However, it seemed that Yuan Shu knew that he was coming, as the entire ward was set up flawlessly. Hui tried to dig 3 feet into the ground and found that the ward was 5 meters deep. It was not a problem for him to go through, but this was not what he wanted. What he wanted to do was to destroy the ward and let the European server players pass through. After all, his strength alone was not enough to fight against Yuan Shu's army. Therefore, Hui had been studying how to destroy this ward for the past few days. He first flipped through all the records about wards in the ancient books, then went to the Hidden Dragon Village's skill pavilion and began to search for the information about wards stored inside. He even consulted the knowledgeable Evil King before he finally had some ideas. He reached out to touch the soft light film of the ward and activated his analysis ability. Black Light Barrier, Level 3. Enchantment details: a defensive enchantment set up by Yuan Shu and several Ghost Kings. Defense Strength, Level 3. 2. Ghost Emperor Level. Enchantment ability: after laying down the Black Light Barrier, the enchantment will automatically absorb the dark energy in the underworld and gather it inside. The interior of the enchantment will form a dark domain. The longer it lasts, the stronger the dark domain will be. Although he didn't know what Yuan Shu was trying to do, he was sure that the old bastard was up to no good. He must be accumulating his anger in preparation for a big move. As a malignant tumor that specialized in digging seals, Hui felt uncomfortable if he didn't set him up. In the past few days of research, he had also found a way to destroy the Black Light Barrier. He knew that as long as he destroyed the 5 central points of the energy flow on the barrier, he could destroy the entire barrier. Instead, he followed the method provided by the Evil King and bought a batch of materials from the auction house. Then, he made a trip back to Beiki and sought the help of Lin Tai, the top blacksmith among the players, to build an instrument that would be extremely helpful in breaking the Black Light Barrier. World-Shattering Dagger, Level 3 Special Tool. Item details: a special tool made from magic-breaking stone, world-shattering iron, 1,000 alchemy gold, and other high-level spiritual ores and spiritual materials. It is specially used to break seals, enchantment, and other defensive barriers. It can break the barrier of the Ghost Emperor level. Special effect: world-shattering, no cooldown. Boundary point sensing: sense the central point of the energy flow of the barrier. Only the approximate location can be determined. Cooldown: 1 minute. Durability: 1,000. The durability of the special tool will be depleted when breaking the seal. Can be repaired at the blacksmith's shop. Blacksmith. Lin Tai looking at the dagger in his hand that was glowing with a black light, he felt a little heartache. He had almost gone bankrupt in order to build this world-breaking artifact. However, he felt a little better when he thought that he could still use it in the future. Then, Hui held the dagger and stabbed it into the Black Light Barrier. The barrier that was supposed to be indestructible was like tofu meeting a red-hot soldering iron. It was pierced through without any resistance. At that moment, a blood-red thread appeared at the tip of the dagger and slowly pointed to Hui's left. Seeing this, Hui pulled out the dagger and decisively ran towards the left where the blood-red thread was pointing. Although the dagger's boundary point sensing could only lock onto a general area, it was not a problem for Hui. As long as he could lock onto the general area, he would naturally have a way to find the node. After running for a full 3 kilometers, Hui stopped in his tracks. This was because the blood-red thread on the dagger had stopped pointing and retracted back into the dagger. After confirming that the node was here, Hui walked up to the black light barrier and began to touch it. At the same time, he activated the energy wave sensing ability that he had learned in the skill pavilion. As Hui's palm moved, numbers began to appear in his eyes. What he was looking for now was the area with the largest energy wave. That would definitely be the central point of the energy flow of the entire barrier. When he touched the bottom left corner of the barrier, Hui's face suddenly lit up. The energy wave in this area was actually tens of thousands of times stronger than the surrounding areas. It could be said that it had suddenly skyrocketed. He immediately took out the world-shattering dagger and stabbed it into the area that he had detected. Kacha! A crisp shattering sound was heard. The area that was stabbed began to melt rapidly, and a barrier-free zone with a radius of about 3 meters appeared. Game notification. You used the world-shattering dagger to shatter the black light barrier, node 1/5. Item durability 100 points. When he read the game notification, Hui couldn't help but laugh. He knew that his method was correct. In that case, it would not be a problem at all to crack the remaining 4 barrier points. Thinking of this, he got up and was about to look for the other barrier center points. At that moment, his gaze passed through the barrier-free zone and found that there was actually a tunnel inside. Filled with curiosity, Hui stepped over the barrier and walked in. He began to observe the tunnel. It was pitch black inside and nothing could be seen clearly. Hui immediately took out the flashlight that was commonly used by grave robbers and began to illuminate the tunnel. The tunnel was very deep, and he couldn't see the end at all. For some reason, Hui suddenly felt an itch in his heart. This had almost become an old habit of his in the game. It was simply uncontrollable. After all, this thing was too attractive. Who knows, he might be able to dig out a god and become invincible in an instant. However, this tunnel was set up here, and it was so close to the barrier's center point. It should be related to the barrier. After thinking for a while, Hui decided to go in and explore. If possible, he wanted to destroy it. Then he waved his hand. Upon seeing this, the naked hunks behind him took out flashlights, shovels, and other tools from the tool bags on their waists and began to arm themselves. Although these 20 zombie spirits had only developed preliminary intelligence and were still silly, they could still understand Hui's meaning after interacting with him for a long time. Just now, when Hui made a gesture, a thought emerged in their minds as if it was a conditioned reflex. Boss is going to dig a grave again. After the zombie spirits were all dressed, Hui took the lead and walked into the tunnel. Upon seeing this, the zombie spirits followed suit. This tunnel was very long. Hui had been walking in it for a few hours, but he still hadn't reached the end. Looking at the map, Hui realized that he had entered the area of the mysterious dragon tomb, which was also the area where the evil king was. This made him feel that Yuanxu was up to something. After more than 3 hours of rushing, Hui was speechless. This was too long. Could it be that he was going to lead to the central area of the mysterious dragon tomb? However, since he was already here, Hui would definitely not be willing to leave just like that. Therefore, he continued to walk forward patiently. After walking for half a day, Hui was speechless. He almost thought that there was no end to this path that led to the center of the earth. Just as if he was about to open the official forum and listen to music while walking, the view in front of him suddenly widened and a corner appeared in the originally narrow tunnel. Upon seeing this, Hui hurriedly gestured to the back and then extinguished the flashlight. After the zombie spirits had extinguished their lights, Hui began to walk forward slowly. When he came to the corner, he carefully stuck his head out and looked inside. What appeared in front of him was an open cave with a huge formation inside. In the center of the formation was a blue crystal that was flashing with a hazy, icy blue light, illuminating the entire cave. Inside the formation, there were dozens of figures sitting cross-legged. Seeing this scene, he was shocked and quickly retracted his head. He thought that Yuan Shu was having a meeting, but he immediately felt that something was wrong. As he wrinkled his nose, he smelled a corpse aura. He was very familiar with this smell, as it was also on his zombie spirits. Puzzled, he took out the corpse-seeking plate from the channel. Just as he thought, the corpse aura measuring needle on the corpse-seeking plate instantly jumped to the full red area. Corpses? Puzzled, he once again stuck his head out to observe. Those figures were still sitting cross-legged on the ground, motionless. Knowing that they had not discovered him, he immediately activated his analysis ability. Tuobarulong, Ghost Emperor Peak, Broken Body. Corpse information. The 154th His Excellency in the land of Songshu. He spent his entire life in the army and once established a powerful dynasty in the land of Tuoba. His strength reached the Ghost Emperor Peak realm. He was so confident that he gave up on the trial to become a god and chose the path of killing a god to obtain the divine fire. In the end, he was killed by the coiling dragon deity of the heaven realm. Seeing this person's information, he was shocked at first, but then he was ecstatic. What AF * king treasure? As a zombie forge master, he had very little desire for equipment and lives, but he had an extreme desire for the corpses of powerhouses. After all, the stronger the corpse, the stronger he would be. Moreover, all professions in Battle Online had an extremely high degree of freedom. As a zombie forge master, he was not limited by how many zombie spirits he could bring with him. As long as he had strong corpses as a foundation, he could create an incomparably huge zombie spirit army. Filled with excitement, he shifted his gaze to the person beside Tuobarulong. Xiao Pajuan, Middle Stage Ghost Emperor. Corpse information. The 87th His Excellency in the land of Songshu. He was originally the clan leader of the Pajuan clan in the land of Naraka. He was defeated in a battle for resources in the land of Naraka. He fled the land of Naraka with his remaining clansmen and came to the land of Nine Cauldrons, land of Songshu, at that time. He led his clansmen on a series of expeditions and roped in various forces, finally winning the position of His Excellency. After that, he was used as a chess piece by the evil demon god and died in a chess game against the god of Baki. Seeing this person's information, he only had one thought in his mind. I'm rich. I'm rich. I'm going to be rich. Chapter 371. All of them were treasures. After checking the information of more than 10 corpses, he was extremely excited. He felt so happy that he was about to faint. This was too exciting. However, he did not act immediately. Instead, he observed again to make sure that there were no living beings around. Only then did he cautiously walk toward the formation. As he approached, the hazy blue light spots slowly spread out. He also looked curiously at the blue crystal in the center of the formation and activated his analysis ability. Evil formation, ancient divine formation, lack of energy. Formation information, the great refining formation set up by the ancient evil demon god. It was buried deep under the mysterious dragon tomb in the center of the land of Songshu. It intended to refine all living beings in the entire land as its food. However, the evil demon god died in the heaven and earth chess game. This formation has been buried deep underground for millions of years. 23 days ago, it was accidentally discovered by Yuan Shu's subordinate, the Python Ghost King, and used by him. Formation ability. God refining, demonic refining, incomplete, blood refining, corpse refining, curse refining, incomplete, God refining, incomplete. Extract the consciousness of all living beings within the coverage of the formation and refine them into soul medicine, beads of consciousness. Demonic refining. Incomplete. Refine all living beings within the coverage of the formation into demonic slaves with 80% of their strength retained. They will be branded with the demonic slave mark, unable to betray. Must be a living being above the Ghost Emperor realm to withstand the demonic refining, blood refining. Refine all living beings within the coverage of the formation into food. Requires the support of the great technique of stealing foundation, corpse refining. In progress, refined the corpses of dead experts into zombie spirits for the control of the formation. Retain 50% of their strength. Zombie spirits have the ability to grow. Curse refining. Incomplete can curse humans, the curse clan, and the curse god through their bloodline. Seeing the ability of the formation, Hui could not help but take a deep breath. Now, he finally understood why the old bastard Yuan avoided the battle. He was not just stirring up trouble. He was simply doing something earth-shattering. Looking at the 4 energy lines that were connected to the formation, as well as one of the energy lines that had long since dimmed, Hui finally understood why there was a tunnel under the barrier. Obviously, the real purpose of the barrier was not to stop players from invading, but to absorb dark energy to replenish the consumption of the demonic formation. What a cunning old B** starred, utterly devoid of conscience, who he could not help but curse after discovering the reason. Although this evil demon array only had the power of blood refinement and corpse refinement left, it was still incomparably terrifying. Hui could not imagine what would happen if that old bastard Yuan really refined these powerhouses into zombie spirits. By that time, not to mention the players' expeditions, even if the 4 major servers joined forces, they would not be able to defeat Yuan. By then, the European server players would probably have to move to Beiki to live with the Beiki players. That was dozens of ghostly emperors. No matter how tough the players were, they wouldn't be able to defeat them even if they risked their lives. It could be said that they had no chance of winning. At that moment, Hui was suddenly glad that he had discovered it early. Otherwise, the European server would have collapsed. Looking at the blue crystal, Hui immediately picked up his shovel and hacked at the crystal. Clang! A crisp sound was heard. The crystal was unscathed, but Hui was sent flying by a wave of blue energy. Hui got up from the ground and pointed at the blue crystal. Go smash! Upon hearing Hui's command, the 20 or so burly men who had been standing at the back also picked up their shovels and rushed toward the blue crystal. The sound of metal clashing could be heard continuously. Figures were constantly sent flying by the recoil of the array. After a round of beating, the crystal was still unscathed. On the contrary, the shovels in their hands were chipped and their durability had dropped by a large margin. Seeing this, Hui knew that forcefully destroying the array was obviously not going to work. Hence, he stepped into the evil demon array again and reached out to grab a corpse that was sitting cross-legged. He wanted to throw it into the space to see if he could cut off the connection between the corpse and the evil demon array. Game notification. This corpse is being refined and is connected to the evil demon array. Please cut off the connection before attempting to put it into the space. It really didn't work. This won't work, that won't work. What the F***CK should I do? If I don't destroy this place, the European server will definitely be finished. I have to find a way. Hui scratched his head and fell into deep thought. As he thought about it, Hui suddenly had a flash of inspiration. If Yuan can control this array and refine these corpses, why can't I do the same? Thinking of this, Hui suddenly felt a little excited. He quickly went to the crystal and reached out to touch it. Game notification. This evil demon array has been controlled by Yuan. Only those of the same realm can erase the controlling imprint. Seeing this notification, Hui's face instantly fell. One had to know that his realm was only that of a Ghost Supreme commander who had passed the Ghost Supreme trials. How could he possibly have the ability to erase Yuan-Chu's imprint? Hui could not help but let out a sigh. He felt that the European server might really be finished this time. However, giving up just like that was not his style. Hence, he started knocking around the array and even tried to cut off the other 4 energy lines that provided dark energy. However, since the nodes were not destroyed, the moment the energy lines were cut off, they would automatically recover. This made Hui a little mad. The refining array set up by the evil demon god left him helpless. It could be said that he had no way to deal with it. Hui was so angry that he was ready to try to destroy it with brute force. At this moment, he suddenly saw a figure sitting cross-legged in the array from the corner of his eyes. He could not help but be stunned. This was because this figure was very familiar. Thinking of this, he activated his analysis ability. Mo Su, middle stage Ghost Emperor, broken. Corpse information. Once the king of the land of demonic void, Yuanchu's father. He controlled the land of demonic void for 380,000 years. Later, he was killed by Yuanchu and his position as king was taken away. Looking at the corpse's analysis panel, he was stunned. What an unfilial son. He killed his father to prove his Tao, and now he still wants to refine it. Is he still human? He's simply a beast. He could not help but complain. Although he was surprised when he saw the corpse's information, he did not feel surprised after thinking about it carefully. He had interacted with Yuanchu before. He knew that this guy was ruthless and did not care about any feelings at all. As long as there were benefits, he would do anything. Looking at Mo Su, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground with half of his body broken, he suddenly had a crazy idea. Should I get a try? Refining the zombie spirit of the Ghost King realm was extremely difficult for him now. Refining a corpse of the Ghost Emperor realm was almost impossible. Moreover, he had never succeeded in refining Hitorigami. However, at this moment, it seemed like there was no other way. This corpse was of the Ghost Emperor realm. After refining it, he might be able to erase the imprint on the crystal. Thinking of this, he made up his mind. Let's do it. He walked to the front of Mo Su and took out a series of tools from his space. He began to set up a refining formation around Mo Su. Corpse refining powder, enslavement powder, spirit summoning array, and so on. As his experience increased, the number of tools he had increased from the initial refining array to more than 20. They surrounded Mo Su in a circle. This time, he even got 23 zombie spirits to sit around Mo Su. He was prepared to let them help him refine Mo Su together. After completing the complicated steps, he activated the corpse refining formation. Suddenly, black fog rose from the corpse refining formation and entered Mo Su's body. As he began to refine, he suddenly realized that the efficiency of the corpse refining formation had become stronger. At this time, black fog kept emerging from the corpse refining formation. Compared to Hui's previous refining, the efficiency was more than a few times higher. While feeling astonished, Hui shifted his gaze towards the crystal. Dark energy enhancement? My array formation can also be strengthened? This discovery was really a pleasant surprise. Hui, who was initially not confident, suddenly felt confident. Then, he calmed down and began to refine Mo Su. During the refining, he realized that there was already a lot of refining black fog in Mo Su's body. This black fog was obviously provided by the evil spirit formation and was completely different from his own. Hui began to try to drive the black fog out of Mo Su's body. As there was no one controlling the evil spirit formation, the unconscious black fog was easily driven out of Mo Su's body by Hui. Seeing that it was effective, Hui focused and began to speed up the refining. The 23 zombie spirits sitting around also began to help He activate the corpse refining formation to speed up the refining of the black fog. An hour later, Hui's forehead was sweating and his hands were trembling. He realized that he could not control the black fog to perfectly integrate into Mo Su's body. This was because Mo Su's body was too solid like Hitorigami's. It was not something that he could refine at his current stage. After trying again, Hui suddenly sighed and retracted his hands that were controlling the refining of the black fog. The attempt failed again. This time, Hui really could not think of any other way. The formation could not be destroyed, and the zombie spirits could not be refined. It was a flawless 360-degree defense with no blind spots. Distress, endless distress. At this moment, Hui was already thinking about whether to post a post on the official forum so that the European server players could escape in advance. After all, when all the zombie spirits were refined, Yuanchu would be so strong that he could destroy the world. The European server players would not be able to defeat him even if they were to be resurrected 10 times in a row. Oh right, the forum. Hui suddenly thought that it would be better to ask for help from the players instead of racking his brains. There were all kinds of players in the forum, and he might be able to find a solution there. Therefore, he opened the forum panel and took a picture of the situation around him. Then, he posted a post on both the local and European servers. You may not believe it, but the European server is about to collapse. I'm asking for help from all the professional players. Please come up with a good idea. OP. Taoist Corpse Hunter content. Detailed explanation. Attached with video, such a post full of gimmicks would usually disappear very quickly when it appeared on the forum. However, it was different this time because the poster was Taoist Corpse Hunter, or a man with a natural disaster halo. Soon, a large number of players flooded the post. Crayon_Shinchan. You scared me. When I saw the title and then the OP's name, I thought the malignant tumor was going to do something big again. Laughing emoji, *_universe. Europe. Oh my god, dozens of ghost emperors. You must deal with the great demon king. Otherwise, we're really done for. Shocking. JPG, McRae, Europe, what the F *CK. Oh my god, is it really that scary? Great demon king, you must stay calm. You must stay calm. It's all up to you. Everyone help. Help. Rolling_Earth Dragon. Europe, we're done for. We're done for. If these ghost emperors are really refined by Yuan-Shu, we can only go to Beiki to fight for territory with the local players. Crying emoji. Shueli_the strongest replied to Rolling_Earth Dragon. Come and try. Dripping blood emoji. At this time, the players were wailing in the European server forum. After seeing Hui's post, they almost had a mental breakdown. Dozens of ghost emperors. They were having a headache dealing with Yuan-Shu alone, let alone dozens of ghost emperors. Therefore, the players quickly united and began to discuss what to do. Looking at the players' discussion, Hui was also thinking if there was any other way. At this moment, a player's suggestion made his eyes light up. In Xiaoqi _royal sister. Great demon king. Weren't you still very weak when you stole Chana's head? Moreover, you managed to refine it successfully. So, why don't you try twisting Yuan-Shu's father's head off and splicing it together? Seeing this reply, Hui's eyes lit up and he slapped his thigh. Good idea. Why didn't I think of it before? Chapter 372. Looking at the various replies from the players on the official forum, Hui's face broke into a smile. At that moment, a large number of players in the forum were asking Hui to turn on the live broadcast. They said that they wanted to discuss and help him come up with a plan to settle this matter. But in fact, they wanted to see Hui, the great demon king, stir up trouble. Hui thought about it and decided to turn on the live broadcast. After all, the suggestions from the players were really helpful to him. The moment the live broadcast room was turned on, countless players flooded in. In just a few minutes, Hui's live broadcast room had become the hottest topic on the official website. At the same time, a large group of onlookers started spamming the bullet screen with the great demon king is stirring up trouble. After taking a look at the live broadcast room, Hui once again focused his attention on the demonic formation. Actually, it was not that Hui had never thought of cutting off the other 4 central points of the barrier to cut off the energy supply here. However, doing so is risky. After all, he did not know when these ghost emperors would be completely refined. If he did not make it in time, the European server would be finished. However, In Xiaoqi's reply gave Hui a flash of inspiration. Due to being too nervous previously, he had forgotten that partial refinement could speed up the refining process. Without hesitation, Hui immediately commanded his zombie spirits to start pulling Emo Su's corpse. However, Emo Su's corpse was very hard like Hitorigami's. Even though his zombie spirits had reached the realm of half-step Ghost King, they could not tear Emo Su's head off his torso with all their strength. Faced with this problem, Hui began to take out his corpse-dissolving powder and applied it on Emo Su's neck. Then, he began to command the zombie spirits to pull it off. 1-2 pull, 1-2 pull, 1-2 pull. Seeing this scene, the players in the live broadcast room burst into laughter. Crayon Shinchan. Big tumor, look behind you. Yuan-Shu is watching you. Star of the universe. Europe, do your best. Great Demon King. If you do this, our guild will pay for all your expenses in breaking the seal. Jason, Europe, Great Demon King, it's really up to you this time. I've sent you 10,000 soul coins in the form of an email. Please check it. Do your best. Big Green Dragon. Europe, haha. After fighting with Yuan-Shu for so long, I'm inexplicably happy to see this scene. Maybe my grudge against Yuan-Shu is too deep. Roasting Chong, you while hugging Jade Rabbit. Puffed. Ha! The European server is about to collapse. Is it really okay for you guys to be so happy? Goblin Warship. Yunshu. Mother of Asterisk Her. Just you wait. Laughing emoji. Watermelon_Taro. I'm shocked. More than 20 naked men are actually doing this. It's a large-scale dismemberment scene. I'm just a child. It's too scary. I'm going to call the police. Laughing emoji. While he was working hard, the audience in the live streaming channel was unusually lively. The bullet screen rained down on the screen. If it wasn't for the bullet screen, it would be impossible to see the screen clearly. Under Hui's command, the zombie spirits stood on two sides, one pulling the shoulders and the other pulling the head. The scene was inexplicably hilarious. However, from Hui's point of view, this was a very serious matter. After all, if one's head could not be torn off, everything else would be in vain. As time passed, Hui's expression grew more and more serious. The players who were having fun in the live streaming channel also realized that something was amiss. They stopped refreshing the bullet screen and focused their attention on the situation. If the land of Sangshu was occupied by Yunshu, it would definitely affect more than just the European server players. With so many zombie spirits in his hands, Yunshu's ambition would definitely expand. Hence, his next target was likely to be the land of Beiki. This was something that the players of both servers did not want to see. After trying again, Hui waved the zombie spirits to stop their tug of war. Then he clicked on the live streaming channel's interface. Are there any pharmacists in the live streaming channel? Who knows how to refine corpse refining powder? It's best if it's corpse dissolving powder. Anyway, I need a high-quality one. As he spoke, Hui took out a pack of potions, opened the analysis, and displayed it in the live streaming channel. Corpse dissolving powder, level 2 potion. Potion introduction. A special level 2 potion made by grinding and stirring 7 kinds of herbs, including bone erosion worm powder, muddy spirit water, green tusk flower. Potion effect. Has a strong corrosive effect and can cause continuous damage. It can also be used to refine corpses. Potion quality. 19. Seeing the analysis panel of the potion in Hui's hands, the comments section suddenly became lively again. Many Beiki pharmacist players immediately began to reply in the live streaming channel, saying that there was no problem and that they would start immediately. Thank you, Hui said and started waiting. At that moment, a comment in the live streaming channel caught Hui's attention. Serene player. Actually, you could try using the Tier 4 potion corpse dissolving water. I read about this potion in the alchemy manual before. Its effects are very strong. Originally, it was used for assassination or to be thrown at enemies. However, the one you're refining is a Ghost Emperor expert. Although this potion can't melt Void's corpse, I don't think it'll be a problem for it to break through his defense. Seeing this comment, Hui's heart skipped a beat. In fact, in his opinion, using corpse dissolving powder to break the demonic Void's defense was too difficult. It was basically impossible. He had also considered using a higher level corpse dissolving water, but the pharmacist profession had just been released not long ago. It was already difficult to refine a level 3 potion, let alone a level 4 one. Hence, Hui felt that it was unrealistic. After thinking for a while, Hui clicked on the comment and replied with anticipation, "Brother, do you know how to refine corpse dissolving water?" I don't know, but I can guide others in refining it." The player quickly replied to Hui's question. Seeing this reply, Hui was stunned. How could he guide others when he didn't know how to refine it? Was this a joke? Syrian player. It's true. Believe me, although I'm not good at refining medicine, I've been studying the beginner books on refining medicine in the intermediate stage. My basic knowledge is very solid. I can guarantee that no pharmacist is more proficient in refining medicine than I am. Seeing this person's reply, Hui thought for a while and replied, "All right, I believe you. I'll help you find a pharmacist." Then, Hui closed the reply interface and said to the players in the live streaming channel, "Are there any more powerful pharmacists in the live streaming channel? Are there any powerful apothecaries in the stream room? Let's contact this Syrian player and give a try." Hearing Hui's reply, a group of pharmacist players immediately began to contact this Syrian player. Niefeng, who was far away in Beiki, suddenly received the contact of dozens of pharmacists. He was very familiar with the names of these pharmacists. They were all from the same batch of students who attended the medicine refining course on the side of the rock. He scanned through the names on the list, chose a reliable pharmacist, and added him as a friend. After adding him as a friend, Niefeng sent his coordinates to the pharmacist player. At the same time, he also received the coordinates that the pharmacist player had sent to him. Then, both of them began to run toward each other's location. Time passed bit by bit as they waited. During this period, many players had already mailed him high-quality corpse-dissolving powder that they had refined. He had also tried them one by one. However, the result was just as the Syrian player had said. There was no effect at all. He could not break through Mo Su's defense at all. Under such circumstances, he could only hope that the Syrian player would bring him a surprise. Another half an hour had passed. Just as he was about to try using the corpse-dissolving powder again, a game notification rang. Game notification. You have received a mail from player Niefeng. Please check. Seeing this, he quickly opened the mail. Sender, Niefeng, content. Hello, Great Demon King. I am the Syrian player. The corpse-dissolving powder that you wanted has been completed. Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. However, I failed a few times during the process. The quality of the product this time is a little low. I hope it will be successful. Looking at a bottle of purple potion in the male's inventory, Uhi's face lit up with joy. Originally, he did not have much hope in refining the corpse-dissolving powder. He did not expect this player to bring him such a huge surprise. Uhi immediately took out the potion from the male. Corpse-dissolving powder, level 4 potion. Potion introduction. Intermediate potion, made from more than 20 types of medicinal herbs. It has a strong corrosive effect and has bonus damage to zombie-type creatures, depends on the quality. Potion special effects, strong corrosion, level 4. Corpse dissolving, level 4. Potion quality, 13 potion maker. Lin Xiaodong seeing this potion, he knew that he really had hope of defeating Mo Su this time. He immediately walked in front of Mo Su, pulled out the cork of the potion, and carefully poured the corpse-dissolving powder on Mo Su's neck. This time, it was obviously effective. Fine bubbles began to emerge from Mo Su's neck, and a pink line appeared. It's really effective. Hui could not help but clench his fist. Then, Hui poured the potion evenly around Mo Su's neck. While the potion reacted with Mo Su's skin, he began to command the zombie spirits to tug of war again. Under the corrosion of the potion, Mo Su's neck was no longer as strong as before. Under the pulling of the zombie spirits, it finally began to separate bit by bit. Pa! The crisp sound of bone and flesh being separated was heard. Mo Su's head was finally separated from his body. Seeing this, the players in the live, streaming channel cheered. Receiving Mo Su's head from the zombie spirits, he could not help but laugh out loud. With his head, he might be able to solve the crisis this time. His strength would also be greatly improved. What a happy ending. He tried to throw Mo Su's head into the channel. Since Mo Su's head had already separated from his body, the game notification did not appear this time. It was easily stored in the channel by Hui. Looking at the remaining half bottle of corpse-dissolving potion, Hui could not help but look at Mo Su's other body parts. Knowing that the remaining amount of potion would not be enough to remove the body, Hui focused his attention on Mo Su's limbs. Hui never had any resistance towards corpses. Otherwise, he would not have committed so many mistakes in the past. Therefore, he was ready to take action again. However, just as Hui was pouring the corpse-dissolving potion, a figure suddenly appeared from the right side of the tunnel. Seeing that someone had appeared, Hui was also shocked. He immediately turned his body to look. Yuanshu. Seeing this person, Hui immediately recognized his identity. Yuanshu was also stunned. He also recognized Hui at this moment, but in his memory, Hui was clearly dead. Also, why did the 20 or so naked men behind him look so familiar? They were all resurrected. Thinking of this, Yuanshu could not help but widen his eyes. Then, he looked at the corpse under Hui and his eyes widened even more. Because the head of Mo Su's corpse, which was also his father's head, it was gone. Chapter 373. Yuan-Chu's sudden appearance caught Hu-He, who was about to disassemble Imo-Su's arm, off guard. At this moment, the two of them stared at each other with their eyes wide open. As they stared at each other, Yuan-Chu's face gradually turned ferocious, while the smile on Hu-He's face gradually froze. The atmosphere became extremely awkward. "It's you. You've actually resurrected." Yuan-Chu's face was gloomy as he walked towards Hu-He step by step. "Unfilial son, your father is in my hands. Try and touch me." Hu-He immediately raised Imo-Su's broken body and threatened him. Although Hu-He knew that Yuan-Chu did not care at all, he still wanted to try and threaten him to put up a last-ditch struggle. What if Yuan-Chu, this unfilial son, suddenly became filial? However, nothing unexpected happened. Imo-Su continued to walk towards Hu-He with a straight face. When he was not far away from Hu-He, Yuan-Chu stopped and looked at the zombie spirits behind Hu-He. "So you're the only one who resurrected. They've all become zombie spirits. Are you a zombie forge master? I'm your father." Knowing that he could not escape, Hu-He did not bother to talk to Yuan-Chu anymore. He pointed at Yuan-Chu, and suddenly, the zombie spirits behind him began to rush towards Imo-Su. Seeing this, Yuan-Chu's face turned cold. With a wave of his hand, he sent several zombie spirits flying. His figure flashed, and he quickly rushed towards Hu-He. Seeing this, the surrounding zombie spirits immediately blocked Hu-He's way. However, in the face of the powerful Yuan-Chu, the zombie spirits were completely helpless, even if they had the strength of a half-step ghost king. Under Yuan-Chu's charge, they could not resist and were all sent flying. At this moment, Yuan-Chu arrived in front of Hu-He, grabbed his neck, and slowly lifted him up. "It's not an ethereal body, it's a physical body. You've really resurrected." Looking at Hu-He, Yuan-Chu could not believe it. "I wanted to resurrect your father and teach you a lesson, you unfilial son." Hu-He continued to be stubborn. Hearing this, a ferocious smile appeared on Yuan-Chu's face. "Speaking of which, you and I have a deep relationship. Back then, you rejected my offer to surrender. Now that I'm giving you another chance, will you cherish it? How regretful. Why did I let you out, you scourge?" Hearing Yuan-Chu's words, Hu-He recalled the mistake of letting Yuan-Chu out and felt remorseful. Don't jump to conclusions so early. Think about it carefully. How powerful will I be after I refine these experts who once shook the heavens and the earth in this region? Follow me, and your future will be limitless. As long as I conquer a second major domain or become a god, I'll grant you the position of an abyssal prefect. Although Hu-He's attitude was bad, Yuan-Chu did not kill him directly. He had interacted with Hu-He a few times and knew how valuable he was. Back then, he had a huge advantage and could have easily taken over this region with the help of the powerful army of the original Changshu. However, due to Hu-He's frequent release of natural disasters, the situation had become chaotic, resulting in the current situation. Originally, he hated Hu-He to the core, but things are different now. Now that he had control over the demonic formation, Hu-He's ability to easily find seals and the corpses of powerhouses was too valuable to him. Therefore, Yuan-Chu wanted to try and recruit Hu-He. He believed that as long as Hu-He was loyal to him, he would be able to obtain a powerful and incomparably large zombie army with Hu-He's ability. By then, he would be the uncrowned king, second only to the gods. I know what you're thinking. Unfortunately, I can't rest easy if I'm loyal to an unfilial son like you who killed his own father. Hearing this, Yuan-Chu's face darkened. He had actually restrained his temper towards Hu-He, but he did not expect Hu-He to not give him any face at all. Looks like your choice this time is still as ignorant as before. Yuan-Chu asked again. I never negotiate with beasts. Hu-He continued to speak. Then go to hell. Yuan-Chu had lost his patience. His right arm that was strangling Hu-He's neck suddenly expanded, and with a huge force, Hu-He's neck was instantly broken. Then, he turned into a black fog and dissipated on the spot. Seeing Hu-He turn into a black fog and dissipate after his death, Yuan-Chu's expression turned solemn. After contacting Hu-He, Yuan-Chu was sure that Hu-He's body was a physical entity, and there was a soul within it. However, both the soul and the body had disappeared into thin air. This time, not only did Hui's body disappear, but the 20 zombie spirits also disappeared. All of this was very strange. Yuanshu suddenly thought of the player clan, one of the forces under the evil king that had been fighting with his Yuanshu army recently. Could it be that he was from the player clan? Yuanshu, who could not figure it out, looked at Mo Su's broken body on the ground and began to scan around the demonic formation. From Yuanshu's point of view, the head must have been hidden by Hui. After all, a tool related to the law of space was not something a weakling like him could possess. However, after looking around and even using his consciousness to search, Yuanshu was shocked to find that his father's head had really disappeared. At this moment, Yuanshu was a little confused. He felt that Hui was too strange. After exiting the game, Hui did not choose to go offline. Instead, he continued to lie in the gaming pod and opened the battle official forum. Although he knew that Yuanshu would come when he destroyed the demonic formation, he was still caught off guard when he actually appeared. Facing the powerful Yuanshu, he knew that he was completely defenseless now. Death was inevitable. However, the 3-hour cooldown for resurrection was still very uncomfortable for him. Hui had a love-hate relationship with this game. He loved its realism, freedom, and fairness, but he hated its rigid attitude that refused to compromise with the players no matter what. For example, opening a channel for soul coins to top up, removing the 3-hour cooldown for resurrection, increasing the frequency of game activities, etc. The battle official had never turned a blind eye to the strong feedback from the players. Moreover, the battle official gave the players the impression that they were making the game seriously. As for whether the players wanted to play or not, it was up to them. Such a deceitful attitude. If it was any other game, Hui believed that the players would have flipped the table and protested. However, when faced with a battle online that generated love, after several collective protests, the players realized that they could not come up with anything to threaten the official website. This made the players very worried, including Hui. The 3-hour torturous time had just begun. Hui decided to browse the official forum to kill time. At this moment, a post on the official forum caught his attention. Player Niafong, where did you go? Aren't you going to provide the explosive pills that you said you were going to? Don't tell me you stole our guild's spiritual materials and ran away. OP, Wolf Ren content. Today, there was a player named Niafong. His forum name was unknown. The reason was that during the war with the Nine Yao army, this player named Niafong refined explosive pills that were very effective and powerful. Many guilds fought for them as a strategic resource. In order to ensure that he could refine medicine better, our guild decided to give him a batch of spiritual materials and store them with him in advance so that he could refine as much as he wanted. In the beginning, he did provide our guild with 2 batches of explosive pills. However, this guy didn't provide any more and kept saying that he was very busy. But you've been busy for a month now. Brother, if you're really busy, can you return some of the spiritual materials? The rest will be your reward for refining the explosive pills. Replies, Strike Gold. F*CK, brother, are you in the same situation? Me too. Yishwerer is the cutest. I know that 3 guilds' spiritual materials are in his hands, and he hasn't returned them. However, I still gave him a chance, and am waiting for him to return them. A mammoth. I'm speechless. The excuse he gave me was that he had been failing a lot recently and needed to take a break. It turns out that our guild isn't the only one being scammed. Chana's unbelievable face. JPG, Jean-Tien, 666. So you guys are in the same situation too. Looks like I'm not alone. This is a huge scam. So many people have fallen into it. Laughing emoji. This post was originally posted by a player, but became a hot topic after it attracted a lot of attention from the guilds that were scammed. While reading the post, Hui felt that the name Niefeng was very familiar. He thought about it carefully and suddenly remembered. Isn't this the master apothecary who gave me the corpse dissolving water and guided others in refining level 4 medicine? I didn't expect him to be such a person. Hui originally had a good impression of Niefeng, but he couldn't help but sigh when he saw so many powerful guilds denouncing him. At this time, another post popped up in the forum. What caught Hui's attention was that the person who posted it was the Syrian player, Nyefone. He immediately clicked on the post. All right, I'll be honest. I'm really being honest. I can't take it anymore. I'll tell you the truth. I hope everyone can understand. Original poster, Syrian player content. I know that everyone is looking for me. Many guilds have stockpiled a large amount of spiritual materials with me, which adds up to hundreds of thousands of soul coins. This is definitely not a small amount. Originally, I just wanted to provide some help to everyone fighting against the Nine Yao army by refining explosive pills for free. I'm very grateful that all of you trusted me and gave me so many valuable spiritual materials. However, I can assure you that I'm definitely not greedy for these spiritual materials. I'm definitely not that kind of person. Now, let's talk about the cause of the incident. When the Nine Yao army attacked, I was refining medicine or forging tools with many lifestyle players in the Mansion of the Dead as your logistical support to contribute to the war. However, who would have thought that Sun would suddenly appear in the Mansion of the Dead with the warriors of the Nine Yao army? The situation was very urgent at that time. Although many lifestyle players and NPCs tried their best to resist, they still couldn't stop Sun, who was leading the army. I felt really bad watching them die one by one. Among them were my teachers and my friends. However, I was hot-headed and suddenly remembered that I could refine explosive pills. The stronger the medicinal effect, the more powerful it would be. Under such circumstances, I really did it. I even threw all the medicinal materials you gave me into Instructor Rock's medicine refining furnace. I don't know how I did it. The medicine furnace that was supposed to explode at the beginning was controlled by me until the very last moment. The power was unimaginably great. I admit it. I was the one who blew up the entire Mansion of the Dead. Crying emoji, please forgive me. I did it for Beiki, for a common home. Everything was unintentional. Please forgive me. Crying emoji. Attached is a picture of the refining process. Replies, crayon_Shinchan. Looking at your forum name, you are very self-aware. Laughing emoji, but you're not just a Syrian player. You're basically a combination of an Iraqi player, a Taliban player, and a Syrian player. It's a pity that you're not a terrorist. Laughing emoji, watermelon_Taro. Oh my god. I was wondering why Sun was seriously injured. Now, all the suspicious points make sense. You're really a nuclear weapon. Scary. Roasting_Jade_Rabbit_ while _hugging_Chong. What the F *CK. Big brother. Your revenge is too cruel and cruel. You blew up our house. Bleeding emoji. Shuali_the_strongest. Why didn't you admit it earlier? We all thought you stole the spiritual materials. However, when the Mansion of the Dead is restored, don't refine medicine in the Mansion of the Dead. My heart isn't good. If you do that again, I'll die on the spot. Bleeding emoji. Like wolf_tiger_panther. Scary. When the Mansion of the Dead is rebuilt, move to the Ghost Mountains next door to refine medicine. Don't ever come to Beiki to refine medicine. Otherwise, I'll issue a wanted order to hunt you down. Storm_warrior. How scary. I attended the rock training course with you back then. At that time, I already felt that you were a dangerous person. Every time you refine medicine, you cause such a huge commotion. I didn't expect you to be even scarier than I imagined. Society. Boss Nyefone, you're really an unsolvable bomb. Laughing emoji, crayon_Shinchan, Layden, young man, the organization needs you. Laughing emoji, after reading the content of the post, he finally understood what was going on. At that time, the explosion of the Mansion of the Dead caused a huge sensation. Basically, all the players thought that it was Sun's doing. After all, other than Sun, no other player had the ability to destroy the world. However, if it was really Sun's doing, there were many suspicious points. For example, if Sun wanted to occupy Beiki, why would he destroy the most important Mansion of the Dead? Also, why would Sun be on the verge of death after destroying the Mansion of the Dead? This time, after Nyefone posted an explanation and attached a picture, all the suspicious points were explained. At that moment, he had no choice but to admit that this Syrian player was really cruel. He was simply a malignant tumor. At that moment, he was immersed in the role of a bystander. He had completely forgotten that he was the biggest malignant tumor among the Battle Royale players. While browsing through the replies in the post, Hui suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Wasn't he able to refine a nuclear bomb? Could the demonic formation under the uncanny dragon tomb explode? Chapter 374. Thinking of this, Hui immediately opened his mailbox in the forum and found the email sent by Niefeng. Then, he clicked on the profile picture of the Syrian player and chose to add him as a friend. Now, he was at a loss as to how to destroy the evil formation. Moreover, Yuan Shu should have discovered the broken boundary point and would definitely repair it to speed up the refinement of the evil formation. Yuan Shu might even become more vigilant and station troops at each boundary point to prevent the same thing from happening again. Therefore, to Hu He, destroying the demonic formation had become a very difficult task. Even if he managed to avoid Yuan Shu's troops and enter the evil formation, it was still uncertain whether he could destroy the evil formation with just Mo Su's head. However, things are different now. After knowing that there was such a malignant player like Niefeng and learning about his alchemy, Hui felt that he could cooperate with him to blow up the entire evil formation and eliminate any future troubles. While waiting, Niefeng accepted his friend request. Hui clicked on the dialogue box with anticipation. Hui, brother Niefeng, I have a big deal here and I need your help. Niefeng, F*CK, the great demon king, added me as a friend. Scary, fearful eyes. JPG. Hui, what's there to be afraid of? Tong Gua's confused face. Niefeng, you're the malignant, great demon king. When you first entered the game, it happened to be the evil calamity. As a newbie, I was really miserable, wiping tears. I really wanted to stab you. Hui, you're the malignant, great demon king, flustered and exasperated emoji. Speaking of which, do you want to help me? Niefeng, great demon king, I'm sorry, I really don't have time. I have to find a way to repay my debt. A few big guilds said that they don't want to repay, but a few small guilds are broke. Their spiritual materials are basically all in storage. Although they also said that they don't need to repay, they can't live with their conscience. Recently, I've been preparing to refine exploding pills and sell them for money to repay my debt. Hui, good job. But if you come with me and do this, you'll be rich immediately. I guarantee that you'll be able to repay your debt and even have a surplus. Niefeng, what's the matter? Don't tell me you're going to cause trouble again. I'm very kind, fearful look. Hui, am I that kind of person? Exasperated emoji. This time, I'm going to destroy the evil demon formation. You've seen the live stream. The evil demon formation is too sturdy. It's basically impossible to destroy it with brute force. But with you, there won't be a problem. When the time comes, there will be many big guilds in the European server funding this. Niefeng, I think I understand what you want me to do, but I can't control the effects of a drug. Last time, it was extraordinary. I can't do it now. Hui, how would you know if you don't try? Young man, the organization needs you. Don't hesitate. You're about to save the entire European server. Niefeng, let me think about it. Please wait. After Niefeng said that he would consider it, Hui waited anxiously. Now, he was afraid that Niefeng would disagree. After all, Niefeng was the core of the plan he had come up with. Without him, he would have to think of another way. About half an hour later, Hui noticed a notification in the chat box. He immediately opened it and saw that it was Niefeng's reply. Great Demon King, I'll join your organization. Let's destroy the world together. No, let's save the world. Seeing this reply, Hui couldn't help but laugh. He immediately replied to Niefeng, asking him to come to the land of Sangshu from the Ghost Mountains and come to his aid. After receiving the reply, Hui opened his friend list again. He found a European server's guild group and clicked in. Then, he told them about Niefeng's participation in the group. He also mentioned that destroying the demonic formation required a lot of spiritual materials, so he needed funding from all the major guilds. In response to Hui's request, the guild leaders in the group immediately expressed that they had no problem with it. They also asked Hui how many spiritual materials he needed. Hui wasn't sure about this, so he looked for Niefeng to ask about the amount of spiritual materials he needed to refine the nuclear bomb. Niefeng's reply was only 4 words. The more, the better. Seeing this reply, Hui felt helpless. Hence, he replied the same sentence in a European server's guild group. The guild leaders didn't reject Hui's request. After all, this matter concerned the entire land of Tsangshu. If the entire land of Tsangshu was really occupied by Yuanshu, their losses would be irreparable. They might even have nowhere to go when the time came. After all, Beiki was the territory of the original players. Although everyone was a player, due to the competitive relationship, conflicts were inevitable. They would definitely be the target of expulsion by the Beiki players. Hence, Hui was their life-saving straw. Naturally, the need for a large amount of spiritual materials was not a problem. Many guilds started to get busy immediately. Even the small guilds began to look for their guild members to gather spiritual materials together. The price of spiritual materials in a European server's auction house began to soar. In about half a day, the price of spiritual materials in a European server had actually increased by 1/3. One had to know that the price of spiritual materials was basically stable now. This kind of increase made many clueless casual players who needed spiritual materials tremble with fear. They almost had a mental breakdown. They thought that the price of the entire European server was going to skyrocket and that poor people like them were going to be finished. In half a day, as Hui waited, nearly 50,000 spiritual materials had been sent to his account in the form of mail. At this moment, Hui felt that he was really rich. However, these spiritual materials were not provided for him. They were provided for the malignant bomber that he was preparing to receive. At this moment, Hui was at the border between the land of Tsangshu and the Ghost Mountains, waiting for Niefeng's arrival. In the meantime, Niefeng kept sending his coordinates to him to report his location. At this moment, the two of them were less than a kilometer apart. At this moment, Hui was a little expectant. What did Niefeng look like? Did he have 3 heads and 6 arms? Otherwise, how could he have such terrifying lethality and be such a malignant tumor? After a while, Niefeng's figure appeared in his sight. To Hui's disappointment, he did not have 3 heads and 6 arms. He was just a gentle young man. Hui could not help but pout. He felt that Niefeng's appearance did not match his title of malignant bomber at all. He was so weak. Seeing Hui's beckoning, Niefeng immediately quickened his pace and jogged to Hui's side. Great Demon King. Bomber? Then, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. Everything was said without words. Is this the land of Tsangshu? I've never been here before. I've only seen it in videos. Niefeng seemed a little curious. There's nothing much to see. It's just that the scenery is different and the environment is different. Everything else is similar. After all, Tsangshu and Beiki are adjacent to each other. In comparison, the difference between the Hell server and the Asia server is bigger. I'll have to visit it when I'm free in the future. Then the players from the 2 servers will have a headache. Niefeng suddenly stopped talking. He could clearly feel the murderous aura coming from Hui. Let's go to Hidden Dragon Village first. There's a teleportation point there that leads directly to the demonic domain. Then, we'll go straight to Spectral Dragon Tomb. I'm afraid that something will happen if we delay. Hui said. At this moment, Hui was still a little worried. After all, he could not grasp the specific time needed for the demonic formation to refine those Ghost Emperor level masters. In other words, danger could come at any time. Hence, his heart was filled with a sense of urgency. Niefeng nodded immediately. He did not know why. Perhaps it was because there were too many legends about Hui the Great Demon King, but when he faced Hui, he felt a faint sense of fear. Then, Hui brought Niefeng to Hidden Dragon Village. Along the way, Niefeng's eyes kept looking around. Obviously, it was his first time in the land of Tsangshu, so he was filled with curiosity. After arriving at Hidden Dragon Village, the completely different style of buildings attracted Niefeng even more. He even had the urge to stop and admire it and study it. Of course, this was decisively stopped by Hui. Along the way, Niefeng gave Hui the feeling that he was curious about everything. He wanted to study everything and maintain a curious attitude. At this moment, Hui finally understood why Niefeng was so good at refining medicine. He was simply a scholar who was always thinking about how to acquire knowledge. However, he had gone astray and actually walked the path of a bomber. Along the way, the two of them chatted as they walked. After 2 teleportations and half a day of rushing, they finally arrived at the area where the black light barrier was located. At this moment, Hui waved his hand and summoned his zombie spirits, getting ready for battle. After all, as long as Yuanxu was cautious enough, he would definitely not let the same thing happen twice. It was very likely that he would send troops to guard the place. Seeing more than 20 zombie spirits summoned by Hui, Niefeng's curiosity was aroused again. He stepped in front of one of the zombie spirits and began to size it up curiously. Amazing, you're actually at the half-step Ghost King realm. There aren't many players with the strength of a Ghost Commander now, but you actually have more than 20 half-step Ghost Kings. You're invincible. Niefeng was a little excited. Hui rolled his eyes. These are my brothers, don't touch them. Niefeng nodded, then turned his head to look at Hui and said with some anticipation, Great Demon King, can I learn how to refine zombies? Hearing this, Hui, who was about to answer no problem, suddenly realized something and quickly coughed twice. Ahem, there's nothing much to learn. It's very hard, and if your mental fortitude isn't good enough, you'll be scared to death. I think my mental fortitude is pretty good. Niefeng blinked. Go my ass. Hui cursed in his heart. If it was someone else, Hui wouldn't have said anything. But to Niefeng, he really didn't want to teach him how to refine zombies. After learning about Niefeng's deeds, he knew that this kid's refining skills could not be described as just unreliable. He was completely destroying things. He was afraid that if he taught Niefeng how to refine zombies, he would come up with a self-destructing zombie spirit routine. Then, the reputation of the zombie forge master would be ruined in his hands. Therefore, Hui rejected him righteously. The reason was that it was for his own good, and he was afraid that Niefeng would be scared to death. Although Niefeng wanted to refute this, he still had some idea in his heart. He could only withdraw his request with a bitter face. Niefeng still felt that refining medicine and refining zombies were different. It might not necessarily explode. Chapter 375. Returning to the area where the black light barrier was located, Hui could not help but be vigilant. This time, he did not choose the central point of the barrier that he destroyed previously. Instead, he chose a different direction to prevent any accidents. Follow me. Looking at Niefeng, who was looking up at the black light barrier, Hui felt a headache coming on. He still felt that this guy was not very reliable. Oh. Hearing Hui shout, Niefeng immediately followed. The two of them walked to the front of the barrier. Hui first took out the world-shattering dagger and began to search for the location of the next central point of the barrier. After confirming the location, he brought Niefeng along and sprinted towards the central point of the barrier. After a half-hour journey, when they were close to the central point of the barrier, Hui suddenly stopped and quickly pulled Niefeng to squat down. What's wrong? Niefeng squatted down and asked softly. There's soldiers stationed in front, right beside the barrier. It's just as I guessed. Hui said with a serious expression. What should we do? Niefeng was also a little nervous after hearing Hui's words. Let's check their strength first. As long as they are not at the Ghost King level, I can handle them. As he spoke, Hui pushed aside the withered weeds beside him and quietly poked his head out to look at the soldiers in the distance. Analysis ability activated. Game notification. Target is too far away. Unable to check. Seeing the game notification, Hui could not help but be stunned. Actually, the soldiers in the distance were just a few black dots in his eyes. However, he did not expect that he could not analyze the target's information at such a distance. Hui could not help but feel a little depressed. How is it? Are they strong? Niefeng shrunk his head and asked nervously. I can't see clearly, but why do you look a little scared? Hui looked at Niefeng and curled his lips. I'm a lifestyle player. I don't fight much. Niefeng answered immediately. A lifestyle player who blew up the Mansion of the Dead? A Syrian lifestyle player? Hui suddenly felt that Niefeng's words sounded so shameless. He was obviously a malignant player, but he still wanted to disguise himself as a kind lifestyle player. Was there still any law? Niefeng heard this and immediately put on a bitter face. He did not speak, but he felt extremely wronged. Just then, Hui said, Wait for me here, I'll go check out the situation. Wait for my news. Niefeng nodded and continued to shrink his body. Seeing this, he first kept all the zombie spirits behind him into the zombie soul bag. Then, he began to move forward slowly like a cat. The closer they got to the area where the soldiers were stationed, the more nervous he became. After all, they did not have much time left. If they missed this opportunity, the consequences would be dire. While approaching the soldiers, he activated his analysis ability from time to time. As he was unsure of the maximum range of the analysis ability, he could only try again and again. After advancing a certain distance, he tapped on the analysis function again. This time, the information of the soldiers stationed at the front appeared. Soul Snatcher, Late Stage Ghost Commander. Character details, subordinate of the Soulless tribe in the Yuanshu army. Has the special ability to steal souls. Character status, Normal Ghost Soldier Guard, Mid Ghost Commander. Character details, Elder the Soulless tribe under the Yuanshu army. Expert in physical and blood elementalists. Strong in close combat. Using his analysis ability, he quickly understood the strength of the garrison soldiers. Although there were dozens of people in front of him, the strongest among them was only a Soul Snatcher in the advanced stage of the Ghost Supreme Commander realm. To it was still very easy to deal with them. This time, he did not panic. He slowly stood up and walked toward the garrison soldiers. The moment he showed his head, the soldiers immediately glanced at him with a vigilant look on their faces. "Who is it?" the Soul Snatcher priest shouted at he from afar. Hu did not answer and continued to walk forward calmly. Seeing Hui's attitude, the garrison soldiers all showed a vigilant look on their faces. They were not stupid. Since Yuanshu had sent them to guard this place, it was obvious that there was danger. Although he was only one person, if he did not have the strength, how would he dare to approach them so calmly? "This is our king's territory. If you dare to come any closer, we won't be polite anymore," the leader of the priests shouted angrily. At this moment, he was extremely calm. More than 20 of his underlings were all half-step ghost kings. It would be a piece of cake for them to bully these Ghost Supreme Commanders. Therefore, a heroic spirit rose in his heart, and he continued to walk forward calmly. This undoubtedly made the garrison soldiers even more nervous. "Priest, do you want to send a signal?" the ghost soldier asked. To be on the safe side, although every boundary point was guarded by a Ghost Supreme Commander, the captain of each garrison had a psychic lamp that could transmit signals. As long as he extinguished the lamp, Yuanshu and the Ghost Kings in the Spectral Dragon Tomb would receive the message and rush over to support them. Seeing that he was getting closer, the ghost soldier could not help but ask the priest nervously, "No hurry, let's test his strength." As he spoke, the priest pointed the staff in his hand at he and murmured an incantation. Circles of black light emerged from the tip of the staff and attacked he. Seeing that they were about to attack, he did not hesitate and decisively summoned more than 20 of his underlings. The appearance of these zombie spirits really frightened the soldiers stationed here. At this moment, the black light wave approached. Under Hui's command, the zombie spirits immediately stood in a row in front of him. However, what Hui did not expect was that the black light wave would mysteriously pass through the zombie spirits' bodies and hit him in an instant. Return of the soul. Upon seeing this, the priest gently shook the tip of the staff and began to absorb Hui's soul. Hearing this, Hui was shocked. He did not expect that this person's attack was not a physical attack. He was done for. However, what surprised Hui was that after a few seconds, nothing happened to his body. At this moment, the game notification appeared. Game notification, attacked by soul assimilation. This attack is ineffective and has been exempted. Seeing the game notification, Hui let out a sigh of relief. Then, with a ferocious expression, he waved his hand at the priest and the others who were standing in front of the black light barrier. "Beat them up, beat them to death." Upon hearing Hui's command, more than 20 half-naked zombie spirits immediately dashed towards the soldiers stationed there. These zombie spirits were all Ghost King level experts when they were alive. Even though they were refined into zombie spirits, their physical strength was still extremely strong. In a flash, they arrived in front of the priest, the ghost soldier, and the other garrison soldiers. The leading priest was shocked and immediately raised his staff to meet them. Bang! With a muffled sound, the priest's staff collided with Cha Na's zombie spirit's fist. At this time, Cha Na's zombie spirit had already attained the strength of a half-step Ghost King after Hui's repeated refinement. In a contest of pure strength, the priest was instantly sent flying. 24 half-step Ghost Kings attacked at the same time. Be it in terms of strength or numbers, they crushed the garrison soldiers. At the moment of collision, be it the priest, the ghost soldier, or the other soldiers, all of them were sent flying and crashed into the black light barrier. At this moment, the old priest did not hesitate. He immediately took out the psychic lamp and crushed it with force. The lamp was extinguished in an instant. At the same time, far away in the central area of the mysterious dragon tomb, Yuan Shu, who was comprehending the formation knowledge he learned from the demonic formation with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. Knowing that something had happened to the barrier, he suddenly stood up and said to the Ghost Kings who were sitting at the side and comprehending the formation knowledge with him, "Something has happened to the barrier. All of you go there quickly. I'll go to the demonic formation now to check the situation." "Yes, my king." The Ghost Kings at the side replied respectfully. Then, they got up and rushed toward the barrier point that Yuan Shu had pointed out. After Hui broke the barrier point last time, Yuan Shu knew that the demonic formation was no longer safe. However, he did not expect that the trouble at the barrier point this time was still related to Hui. At the same time that the priest crushed the psychic lamp, Hui's expression suddenly changed. He had seen this kind of psychic lamp in the ancient books. It was specially used for communication and had many uses. According to the records, this kind of lamp was also the nemesis of the zombie forge masters. This was because some special psychic lamps were specially used to guard tombs. As long as a tomb robber entered a tomb chamber with a special psychic lamp, the lamp would automatically extinguish and convey the news to the descendants of the tomb owner or the tomb keeper. In the secret skill of zombie spirit sect that his grandfather passed to him, there was a special page that described this lamp in detail. At this moment, Hui realized that things were not looking good. If Yuan Shu really came, the mission would definitely fail. He immediately shouted in the team voice chat, "Bomberman, come here quickly. Bomberman, hurry up and come over here. We have to hurry." After shouting, Hui raised his hand and pointed at the priest and the others. "Leave no one alive. Kill them all." When the zombie spirits heard this, their attacks became more ferocious. The priest and the soldiers could only defend bitterly. However, at this moment, they did not dare to retreat. If they did, then Yuan Shu would definitely not let them go. While the zombie spirits were fighting with the priest and the others, Hui also quickly walked to the front of the black light barrier. He began to use energy sensing to measure the energy value and determine the specific location of the barrier's central point. After about 5 minutes, Hui found the area with the strongest energy fluctuation and decisively stabbed the world-shattering dagger into it. The barrier point immediately began to collapse, revealing a circular hole with a diameter of 3 meters. At this time, Nie Feng also trotted to his side. "Follow me in. Time is of the essence," Hui said as he stepped into the wizardry barrier. "What about them?" Nie Feng asked, pointing at the zombie spirits who were still fighting with the priest and the others. "Don't worry about them. Hurry up and go to the demonic formation, or else Yuan Shu may come," Hui said anxiously. At this moment, Nie Feng also realized that something seemed to be wrong. He quickly followed Hui into the tunnel inside the barrier. Then, the two of them began to walk quickly toward the demonic formation in the tunnel. While moving forward, Nie Feng could not help but ask, "Great Demon King, if I were Yuan Shu, I would directly go to the demonic formation and wait for him when I receive the news that someone has broken the seal. Anyway, I'm the strongest in the land of Sangshu. No one could defeat me. Why would I go to the barrier point to look for you?" Hearing this, Hui suddenly stopped in his tracks. Nie Feng suddenly knocked his head on Hui's back. Yes, Yuan Shu's strength was the strongest in the land of Sangshu. Other than the evil king, there was no one who could rival him. Why would he go through so much trouble to look for him? Niefeng's words suddenly made he realized that Yuanxu was probably already waiting for their arrival in the demonic formation. F***CK. What should we do? I'm afraid we're going to fail again. Thinking of this, Hui could not help but curse. I have an idea. Niefeng chuckled at this moment. Hurry up and release it. Look at the time, you damn tumor. Looking at Niefeng's thoughtful look, Hui really wanted to refine him into a zombie spirit and whip his corpse. Chapter 376. It's actually very simple. Think about it. Who in the land of Sangshu can fight against Yuanxu now? You mean the evil king? He's only a beginner ghost emperor. He can only fight against Yuanxu. There's still a gap in strength, Hui said in shock. We don't need the evil king to fight against Yuanxu. Instead, we need him to lead the players to attack the barrier, or even the spectral dragon tomb. In the land of Sangshu, who else do you think is a match for the evil king other than Yuanxu? As long as he makes a move, Yuanxu will definitely stop him and buy us enough time. Good idea. You're quite smart, you damn malignant tumor. After understanding Niefeng's intention, Hui suddenly realized that this plan was totally feasible. I just read a lot. Niefeng scratched his head and revealed a shy look. Seeing this, Hui couldn't help but raise his middle finger, feeling that this damn malignant tumor was really good at acting. Then, Hui decisively opened the live streaming channel. While walking towards a demonic formation with Niefeng, he began to contact the players through the live streaming channel, asking them to look for the evil king and prepare to organize a wave of feint attacks. At this time, most of the European server players were paying attention to Hui's movements. Seeing that Hui had opened the live streaming channel, countless players immediately swarmed in. After hearing Hui's request, a large number of European server players responded to the call and began to look for the evil king. At this time, the evil king was in the ruins of the ruins, drinking the fine wine he bought from the game's auction house, enjoying the feeling of having a physical body with a satisfied look on his face. At this time, a large number of players suddenly came to him. This made the evil king a little confused, but after understanding the player's request, he suddenly felt a little worried. You want me to fight against Yuanxu? Isn't this bullying him? Even if I give him a handicap of 2 hands, he still won't be a match for me. However, the evil king was still very friendly towards the players, so he sent this request back to Lu Wu. After receiving the message from the evil king, Lu Wu immediately replied, only the original beginner Ghost Emperor strength is allowed. New God-level strength is not allowed. From Lu Wu's point of view, the evil king's strength had already reached the God level. If he was really allowed to display his strength, the player's mentality would change in the future. In the future, they would seek help from the evil king whenever they encountered a problem. This was what Lu Wu wanted to see. After all, the development of the players was the most important, and all the dangers were meant to temper them. After receiving Lu Wu's reply, the evil king immediately decided to bring the players to the black light barrier to fight Lu Wu. Through the bullet screen in the live streaming channel, who was on his way to the demonic formation, knew that the evil king had agreed. Both of them immediately hastened their pace towards the demonic formation. After the previous experience, Hui knew that it would take at least half a day for him and Niefeng to reach the evil spirit formation. Therefore, he began to communicate with the players through the live stream to obtain information from the outside world. Half an hour later, Hui received feedback from the players in the live streaming channel. They had assembled and were on their way to the black light barrier. At this moment, Hui was slightly excited. As long as Yuanxu was gone, the chances of blowing up the evil spirit array would be greater. After another 4 hours of hurrying, Hui stopped when he felt that he was close to the demonic formation. He waited for the players' final feedback. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the huge army of players was approaching the black light barrier through the teleportation point to the demonic realm. When they were about to reach the black light barrier, the evil king's figure separated from the army of players and floated into the air. Then, he turned into a stone statue in the air and crashed into the black light barrier. Of course, the evil king was using his beginner Ghost Emperor strength instead of his divine power. Boom! The collision caused the black light barrier to shake violently, forming waves of energy ripples that spread to the surroundings of the barrier. Boom! The Evil King's second collision arrived, and energy ripples formed again at the point of impact in the distance. When the soldiers stationed here saw the appearance of the energy ripples, their expressions immediately tensed up. Immediately after, a group of soldiers hurriedly rushed in the direction of the ripples, wanting to see who exactly was the audacious bastard that destroyed the barrier. However, when they saw the specific situation, they were shocked because the one who was destroying the barrier was the powerful Evil King. Not far away, the densely packed army of players was slowly advancing. At this moment, the soldiers stationed at the place did not hesitate and immediately took out the psychic lamp that they carried with them. Then, they injected a strand of their consciousness into the psychic lamp and decisively crushed it. Yuan Shu, who was in the evil spirit formation, immediately received the feedback from the soldiers. However, it was different this time because the feedback from the soldiers was the Evil King's army is attacking, the mysterious dragon tomb is in trouble. Seeing this message, Yuan Shu could not help but frown. The arrival of the Evil King at this moment was definitely not good news. However, if he did not rush over to support them, no one in the defense force would be a match for the Evil King. When the barrier was broken, the mysterious dragon tomb would be in trouble and it might even be taken over. After thinking about it, Yuan Shu clenched his teeth, flicked his sleeves, and turned back. While rushing to the mysterious dragon tomb, Yuan Shu's heart was surging with anger. Now that his injuries had fully recovered, he must capture the Evil King and seal him again. After Yuan Shu left the evil spirit formation, Hu He and Nie Feng, who were in another tunnel, still did not move. This was because they had not received any feedback from the players. If they continued to move forward, it would be very unsafe, and it was very likely that they would meet Yuan Shu. While waiting anxiously, Hu He and Nie Feng did not chat. In their hearts, they were hoping that Yuan Shu would take the bait. At this moment, a bullet screen floated by in the live streaming room. Great Demon King, it's done. Yuan Shu is really here. Now that he is fighting with the Evil King, we are also fighting with Yuan Shu's subordinates. They have too many Ghost Kings. We can't hold them off. You guys can do it. Seeing this message, Hu He and Nie Feng's eyes lit up and immediately walked toward the end of the tunnel. In order to destroy the evil spirit formation, they had gone through several setbacks. This time, Hu He was determined to destroy it. After another half an hour of rushing, when they appeared at the corner, Hu He knew that they had entered the area where the evil spirit formation was located. After passing through the corner, a cave shrouded in blue light appeared in front of them. Is this the evil spirit formation? Nie Feng asked curiously as he looked at the huge formation that covered the entire cave. Yes, let's go to the central area. It's all up to you this time. Hu He answered immediately. The two of them strode to the center of the evil spirit formation. Then, Hu He confirmed that Nie Feng chose to trade and traded all the spiritual materials in the space. Bomberman, don't make any mistakes. This time, there's so many brothers from the European server who are fighting for us outside. Upon hearing this, Nie Feng nodded solemnly and took out a red and gilded alchemy furnace from space. This alchemy furnace was specially made by the #1 blacksmith, Lin Tai. It was one of the rare 4th-grade alchemy furnaces among the players, and it was also the key to his refining of the nuclear bomb this time. After turning on the switch, the flaming stone in the alchemy furnace suddenly began to glow and emit raging flames. After the flames stabilized, Nie Feng began to take out spiritual materials and threw them into the furnace. The inside of the alchemy furnace was a self-contained space, so it was not a problem to throw in a large number of medicinal materials. Under the high temperature of the flames, the medicinal materials began to gradually melt. Actually, Nie Feng did not know how to refine the nuclear bomb. He only had one way, and that was to follow the normal steps. In short, it would definitely explode. Beside him, Hu He knew that he could not help much, so he once again looked at Mo Su's corpse that was sitting cross-legged. Since there was still a small bottle of corpse dissolving water left, he wanted to see if he could remove another arm. As time passed, Hu He, who was removing Mo Su's arm, was suddenly startled by Niefeng's exclamation. "What's wrong? This place is very strange, too strange." When refining medicine here, all the medicinal liquid quickly turned black. It's exactly the same as the medicinal liquid that formed during the explosion of the Mansion of the Dead. Upon hearing this, he was a little stunned. "Isn't this normal? Which time have you not refined medicine like this?" "It's not the same. In the past, it was done step by step, but this time it directly turned black after melting." Niefeng was very shocked. "Is there a problem?" He asked nervously. After all, the explosion of the evil spirit formation depended entirely on Niefeng. If he made a mistake, it would all be over. "No, there are only benefits. I reckon that the explosion will become even more powerful," Niefeng said happily. It could be said that this was the first time he felt happy about the impending explosion of medicine refinement. Actually, what Niefeng did not know was that his body was branded with the Dark Precept imprint. The evil spirit formation was currently the transmission point for the dark light barrier to absorb the dark energy. It happened to be the same energy that Niefeng absorbed when refining medicine. At this moment, what Niefeng could not see was that the surrounding dark energy was surging madly into the medicine refining furnace. It continuously integrated into the medicinal liquid and changed the internal energy structure of the medicinal liquid. That was why Niefeng found it strange. With the support of the dark energy, as more and more spiritual materials were poured into the medicine refining furnace, the medicine refining furnace began to tremble. Upon seeing this, Niefeng began to concentrate on controlling the medicine refining furnace, separating the medicinal liquid inside. The final process of medicine refinement was to fuse the medicinal liquid. However, this time, Niefeng had to separate the medicinal liquid. Otherwise, he was worried that if too much medicinal liquid gathered together, it would cause an explosion. Time passed bit by bit. Niefeng's forehead began to drip with sweat. Who was beside him, had also stopped destroying the void demon. He stood at the side with a nervous expression, not daring to breathe loudly as he waited for the earth-shattering moment to arrive. "It's almost done, almost done." Niefeng's face was deathly pale, his lips trembling as he spoke. At this moment, the medicinal liquid in the medicine refining furnace had been separated into 10,000 portions. Other than Niefeng, no other apothecary player could achieve this level of control. "Did you succeed?" He asked nervously. If I let go now, the medicinal liquid will fuse. It's going to explode. I can't control it." At this moment, the medicinal liquid had already begun to permeate the isolation zone created by Niefeng. It was gathering towards the center bit by bit, making Niefeng extremely nervous. At this moment, Niefeng suddenly turned to look at Hui. "Are you ready?" Hui was stunned. "What?" Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Niefeng's body trembling as he took a step back. At this moment, all the medicinal liquid had gathered at the center. The medicine refining furnace instantly turned red and began to crack in less than 3 seconds. Countless rays of black light shot out from the cracks on the medicine refining furnace. "Explode!" Niefeng roared. However, Hui was not prepared at all. He was instantly swallowed by the black light while he was still in a daze. If he could, he really wanted to give Niefeng the middle finger. He had a feeling that this guy was doing this on purpose. He was extremely evil. Boom! The medicine refining furnace exploded. Black light filled the entire cave in an instant. The raging dark energy storm continuously absorbed the rich dark energy in the surroundings, becoming more and more violent. The entire cave began to collapse. At this moment, the blue crystal in the center of the demonic formation was also being corroded by dark energy. The blue crystal was also dyed black. At this moment, a few game notifications suddenly popped up in Hui and Niefeng's minds. Game notification. You have been corroded by dark energy. You will lose 80,000 HP per second. Game notification. You have been engulfed by dark energy. You will lose 100,000 HP per second. Game notification. Dark energy explosion brewing. Game notification. You have obtained the blessing of the evil demon god's remnant power. Dark damage has been isolated. Game notification. You have obtained the demonic crystal protection. Dark damage has been isolated. Under Hu He and Nye Feng's dumbfounded expression, the demonic formation on the ground suddenly began to tremble. Then, it actually broke away from the ground and formed a semicircular protective layer. Then, it slowly floated up into the air, carrying them up into the sky. At this moment, what Nye Feng and Hui did not know was that the formation of such violent energy had already activated the protection circle that the evil demon god had set up in the demonic formation. This was originally a backup plan that he had left for himself. He did not expect that it would now help Hu He and Nye Feng. The demonic formation rose higher and higher. Gradually, it came into contact with the ceiling of the cave. Bit by bit, it broke through the rock layer and began to float up into the sky. Boom! At this moment, the brewing dark energy storm finally exploded. The explosive power formed by the violent power of the rule was even more terrifying than a nuclear bomb. In an instant, the demonic formation shook violently. The demonic formation that was floating up broke through the rock layer and began to float up like a rocket. At this moment, Nye Feng and Hui felt like they were going to die. Under the recoil, their bodies felt like they were going to fall apart. Their HP was dropping rapidly. However, at this moment, the protection circle began to protect their bodies, isolating them from the shock. Only then did the two of them manage to pull through. In the outside world, the evil king, who had already killed his way into the spectral dragon tomb, was fighting with Yuanshu. Fighting with Yuanshu again, the evil king felt a little helpless. This feeling was as if he was a king, but he had to pretend to be bronze to fight against Yuanshu. He even had to pretend that he was no match for Yuanshu. At this moment, the ground shook violently. Then, the ground began to collapse. A blue formation broke out from the ground. In an instant, the players and Yuanshu's soldiers in that area were torn apart by the violent power. At this moment, the demonic formation that was protecting Hu He and Nye Feng finally exhausted the last of its energy. The protective layer dissipated, and the blue crystal turned white. Finally, it produced a push force that threw Hu He and Nye Feng out. At this moment, the corpses of the experts who were also protected in the formation were also thrown out the moment the demonic formation collapsed. While the evil king, Yuanshu, and the players were astonished, Hui's maniacal laughter suddenly came from the sky. Ha ha! Yuanshu, look, your dad has been blown away. Ha ha ha! At this moment, Yuanshu was dumbfounded, obviously unable to react. Ha ha ha! Yuanshu, your dad has been blown away. At this moment, the evil king, who was fighting with Yuanshu, could not help but laugh out loud. F***CK. Yuanshu, your dad has flown the furthest. That's awesome, ha ha ha. Hui's maniacal laughter was heard again. Hearing this, Yuanshu's face gradually turned the color of a pig's liver. Chapter 377. After the demonic formation fell apart, Hu He, Nye Feng, and the dozens of powerhouses' remains were thrown out by the final push, flying freely in the air. Compared to Nye Feng's calmness, Hu He seemed a little arrogant. He pointed at the corpse that flew the furthest away and kept provoking Yuanshu, who he felt extremely carefree at this moment. He had died in Yuanshu's hands several times before. This time, he finally saw Yuanshu being defeated. He felt extremely satisfied, and his laughter became more and more unbridled. Seeing this scene, Yuanshu's heart was boiling with anger. Roar! All of you die. While roaring, Yuanshu's figure flashed, and he was about to dash toward Hu He. At this moment, the evil king blocked his way. Yuanshu, don't rush. Let your father fly for a while longer. Hearing this, Yuanshu's face turned green. He immediately punched at the evil king, and a black hexagram formation instantly appeared on the back of his hand. As the punch was thrown, the wind howled and a ferocious-looking black dragon emerged from the fist wind. It swallowed the evil king into its stomach in one gulp. Go to hell. Then, Yuanshu clenched his fist hard. The black dragon roared at the sky, and its body collapsed. It kept squeezing inwards, binding the evil king tightly, and suppressing his body. At this time, Yuanshu's injuries had completely recovered, and his strength was much stronger than before. His explosive combat power shocked the evil king. However, the evil king, whose body was squeezed in the black dragon's body, was also a little depressed. Although this force could not hurt him at all, he could not resist at all because Luwu had instructed him not to use any power above the beginner Ghost Emperor realm. However, with his previous strength, he could not resist this force at all. Therefore, the evil king could only helplessly shrink in the black dragon's body and feel the pressure coming from all directions. After controlling the evil king, the hostility on Yuanshu's face intensified. Anger burned in his chest as if it was about to burst out. This time, he could have relied on the ancient evil demon god's formation to obtain an invincible zombie army, but he did not expect the outcome to turn out like this. Originally, he thought that the zombie army plan would definitely succeed. Even if there were twists and turns along the way, it would definitely not go wrong. It was not because Yuanshu was conceited, but because he had truly considered all the possible risk factors. First, there was the guarantee of the sentient spirit lamp. Once the barrier was destroyed, he would receive urgent news. Even if there was a mistake with him in the evil spirit matrix, all the invading enemies would not be his opponents, including the evil king. Even when he received the news that the evil king had invaded and led his army to attack the mysterious dragon tomb, he still considered whether someone would sneak into the evil formation to destroy it when he left the evil formation. However, Yuanshu quickly denied this speculation. First of all, the formation eye crystal of the evil spirit formation was already under his control. Only someone with the same strength as him could take it away. In the land of Tsangshu, no one with the same strength as him existed, including the evil king in his eyes. Secondly, when he had found the evil spirit array, he had also studied and studied it. He had discovered that even with his strength, he was unable to destroy the evil spirit array. With these two almost unbreakable guarantees, in order to prevent the spectral dragon tomb from being conquered, Yuanshu left with a peace of mind. However, the result was something he had never expected. The furious Yuanshu still could not figure out how the formation was destroyed. After all, it was a divine formation created by the evil demon god. At that moment, he turned his gaze to the crack in the ground that was broken by the evil spirit array. At that moment, the crack was still spewing out thick black light. The law of darkness was gradually spreading and diluting in the air. The law of darkness. Yuanshu's expression suddenly became solemn. How'd he do it? Thinking of this, he immediately turned his gaze to who was falling from the sky. He gave up on controlling the evil king and dashed towards Uhi. Yuanshu felt that he was really going to be driven crazy by who was resurrected again. When Hui released him from the dungeon seal, he thought that Hui was his lucky star, so he did not kill him before he left. However, he did not expect Hui to repay him with several big gifts very quickly. The first time was when a natural disaster ran rampant in the land of Tsangshu, causing the land of Tsangshu, which could have been conquered quickly, to fall into a protracted war. The second time was when he fought against the 23 prisoners in the demonic domain where he was injured. The third time, which was now, was when he almost destroyed the evil spirit array, which was his opportunity to become a god. At that moment, Yuanshu's hatred for Hui had reached an extreme level, just like Hui's hatred for him. Die! As he waved his arms, two black pythons extended from his palms. They drew two black trails in the air and bit towards Hui, who was falling freely. Hui was not afraid at all when he saw Yuanshu's attack. Instead, he was very calm. After all, he had completed his mission. 3 hours it was, it didn't matter anymore. Thus, he turned on his taunting mode again. Yuanshu, you unfilial son. Look at your father flying so far away and you didn't even go to welcome him. Instead, you came to welcome me. I am your die. Before Hui could finish his sentence, a giant black python swallowed him whole. Another giant black python swallowed the previous python in one gulp. A violent force burst forth from within the giant black python's body. Hui did not last more than 2 seconds before he was shredded into a black fog and dissipated. Seeing that Hui's body and soul had mysteriously disappeared again, Yuanxu's face darkened. From Yuanxu's point of view, Hui didn't die the previous few times, so he wouldn't die this time either. At that moment, Yuanxu suddenly regretted killing Hui. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't have a way to deal with this kind of guy who could resurrect. For example, the infinite darkness, which was a sealed cage that prevented one from committing suicide, could trap Hui in it and make him suffer a fate worse than death. At the thought of this, Yuanxu made up his mind. After this battle, he would build an exclusive enchantment similar to the infinite darkness for Hui. He would guard it personally. He didn't believe that Hui could continue to be so arrogant. Looking at the evil king who was still bound by the black dragon in the air, Yuanxu descended and dashed towards the area where the formation eye crystal of the evil spirit array had fallen. After landing, Yuanxu picked up the formation eye crystal that had already turned white. With a solemn expression, he began to observe whether the crystal was broken. He had studied the evil spirit array before and knew that the core of the evil spirit array was this crystal. The patterns of the array were also extended from this crystal. Therefore, as long as the crystal was not broken, it wouldn't be a problem to restore the evil spirit array. It was just that he would have to pay a huge price. After careful observation, Yuanxu finally let out a sigh of relief. He had to admit that the evil spirit array of the ancient gods was indeed powerful. The core of the array that was made could actually remain intact under the ravaging power of the rule. The only regret was that the energy inside had been exhausted. After knowing that there was hope for the array to be restored, Yuanxu's heart skipped a beat. He then turned his attention to the remains of the powerhouses that had been scattered in various areas of the mysterious dragon tomb. Since the array could be restored, he could naturally continue refining after the array was restored. At the same time that Yuanxu thought of this, Hui, who had already logged out of the game, had a flash of inspiration. He quickly logged into the forum and began to contact Niefeng, sending him messages like crazy. After Niefeng received the messages and understood what Hui was trying to convey, he immediately shouted in the regional channel, "Everyone, stop fighting. Go and grab the corpses. We're only halfway there now. We're only left with the corpses of the powerhouses." All right, the great demon king said that we should prioritize the corpse of Mo Su. He wants to refine it and bring it to Yuanxu, this unfilial son. I'll buy it at a high price. As soon as Niefeng shouted, the noisy regional channel instantly fell silent. Subsequently, the European server players decisively gave up on the battle with Yuanxu's army and began to run towards the area where the corpses of the powerhouses had fallen. After knowing that the crisis had not been resolved, the players felt a sense of urgency in their hearts. The scene instantly became extremely chaotic. Hurry up and grab the corpses. Sell them to the great demon king at a high price. I heard that the corpses of the powerhouses can be used to forge equipment. That's good stuff. Hurry up and grab them. We can't let Yuanxu get the corpses again. Otherwise, we won't be so lucky next time. Captain, you can run faster with your mount. There's one at 12 o'clock. Hurry up. The regional live chat channel, the army's live chat channel, the guild's live chat channel, and the party's live chat channel were all filled with the players' shouts. At this moment, the corpses of the powerhouses that had fallen to the ground had become a delicious steamed bun in the eyes of the players. They were also the key to their plan to completely destroy Yuanxu's zombie army. At this moment, the players each chose a direction and began to rush towards the corpses of the powerhouses. Seeing this scene, Yuanxu was stunned for a moment. Then, he immediately realized what the players were going to do. He quickly roared towards the people below him. Stop them from snatching the corpses of the powerhouses and bring them back. Yuanxu's roar echoed between heaven and earth, shocking the soldiers of Yuanxu's army who were chasing after the players. Unlike the soldiers, the Ghost Kings under Yuanxu naturally knew how important the corpses of the powerhouses were. They immediately dispersed and swept through the air towards the corpses of the powerhouses. As the entire battlefield was very wide, the advantages of the players were immediately revealed at this moment. Firstly, it was convenient to communicate through the live chat channel. Secondly, the storage space could store the corpses. In comparison, The soldiers of Yuan Shu's army had a harder time in this aspect. As long as a soldier managed to snatch the corpses of the powerhouses, they would become the focus of the players' attacks. One by one, they would pounce on the soldier with a ferocious expression and attack as a group, snatching the corpses from the soldier's hands and throwing them into the storage space. Naturally, it was impossible for the soldiers of Yuan Shu's army to snatch the corpses of the powerhouses from the players' hands. At this moment, the storage space had become a cheat in snatching the corpses. However, when faced with the arrival of the Ghost Kings, the players still could not resist, and a few of the corpses were snatched away by the Ghost Kings. At this moment, someone's exclamation was heard in the regional channel. "Wah! I've snatched Yuan Shu's corpse, the one that the great Demon King wanted. I'm going to be rich. Brother, everyone who saw it has a share. Quick, send a red packet of soul coins to the guild." 666. The great Demon King's goal of using it to beat up the unfilial son is about to be realized. F***CK. What's with your hand speed? I also snatched the corpse of a powerhouse just now, but a few pairs of hands suddenly appeared beside me. I didn't even have time to put it into the storage space before it disappeared. Which bastard took it away? Give it back to me. I'll XXXX you. It's a large-scale corpse snatching scene. If these powerhouses knew that they would be played like this after they died, they might as well burn themselves into ashes. Stop arguing. Their Ghost Kings have already made their move. Quick, snatch a few more corpses. It's more than enough to exchange a corpse for a sea view house. Damn it, it's a windfall. Hurry up and snatch it. Why are you crowding? Don't block the way. I've just changed my class to an undead knight recently, and I'm thinking of trying to refine corpses into an undead mount. Please don't block the way. The live chat channel was in chaos. At this moment, the players were no longer in the mood to fight with Yuan Shu soldiers. All of their eyes were bloodshot as they ran toward the corpses scattered around the battlefield. In the end, there were a total of 38 corpses, 23 of which were in the hands of the players. Yuan Shu and his subordinates only managed to snatch 15 corpses, and these 15 corpses were obtained by Yuan Shu and the Ghost Kings. Even if their subordinates managed to snatch the corpses, they would not be able to keep them. Although they did not manage to obtain all the corpses this time, the players knew that they did not suffer a loss. At this moment, the battle had officially come to an end, and the players had entered the final stage of being tortured and killed. However, since the mission had been completed, death was nothing to the players. They were all smiling as they welcomed the arrival of death. Chapter 378. Japan, Hokkaido. A light drizzle was falling from the gloomy sky. At this moment, in a prison in a small town in the northeast of the island, a man slowly walked out of the darkness. As the prison guards congratulated him, the prison's iron bars were opened, and he was escorted out of the prison. The moment he walked out of the prison, the man hesitated for a moment, but in the end he still walked out. No one came to greet him, and no one came to congratulate him. Only the cold raindrops fell on his body. I'm out of prison. He could not help but look at his empty right arm and laugh at himself. He slowly raised his head to look at the sky. The fine raindrops fell on his face, and he could not help but close his eyes. At this moment, his memory returned to 10 years ago. His name was Northstar Oneblade, and he was a direct descendant of the Japanese ancient sword school, the one-sword style. He had been extremely talented in swordsmanship since he was young. It could be said that no one in the Kendo dojo opened by his father could compare to him. Even his fellow disciples in the Kendo dojo felt inferior in front of his talent in swordsmanship. It could be said that they were not on the same level at all. Back then, there were many sword schools in Japan, but most of them were modern swordsmanship, and they did not have much lethality in actual combat. Many of these swordsmanship were just for show, and they were just flashy moves to earn attention. However, there was no lack of truly powerful ancient sword schools, such as the Shinto style, the Nitin style, the Shadow style, the Ayashiki style, and so on. The successors of the orthodox ancient sword techniques were basically disdainful of the modern flamboyant sword techniques. However, they had contacts with other ancient sword techniques of the same level. Every year, they would hold 2 sword techniques exchanges and competitions. These competitions were divided into junior and adult years. North Star One Blade was extremely talented back then, and when he first stepped into the junior division competition, he defeated all his peers and even those who were older than him. He crushed all of them and won the junior division championship. This extremely outstanding talent made his father, North Star Hideo, extremely proud. He felt that North Star One Blade had the ability to revitalize the one sword style and carry forward the ancestral swordsmanship. At that time, North Star One Blade also felt the same way. He felt that he had the ability to win first place in the junior division, which meant that he would also have the ability to win first place in the adult division in the future and push the one sword style to the top of the ancient sword school, becoming the pinnacle that all sword practitioners looked up to. Unbeknownst to North Star One Blade, however, was that it was precisely his excellence that put pressure on his father, North Star Hideo. This pressure didn't come from North Star Blade, but from the outside world. The ancient swordsmanship competition was held twice a year, and North Star One Blade easily took first place in the junior division. However, there was never any suspense about the last place in the official division, and that was his father, North Star Hideo. At first, Baichin Hideo felt proud of North Star One Blade. He felt that North Star One Blade could reach heights that he had never reached before. But gradually, the noises from the outside world increased. At that time, North Star Shiofu gradually felt the pressure. This was because his peers would always compare him to his son, North Star One Blade. He had even overheard people talking about him. If North Star One Blade had been born in another sect, that would have been perfect. Being born in the North Star clan was a waste of talent. For a successor of traditional swordsmanship like him, this kind of humiliation was unbearable. After that, he would often recall the words of his peers, and he felt more and more that he was a coward, a weakling. This thought lingered in North Star Hideo's mind, and he couldn't get rid of it. It was as if it had become a demon in his heart, tormenting him. It was at that moment that North Star One Blade made a choice. He decided to practice the ancient swordsmanship technique passed down by his ancestors, One Blade School, Taiyuan. Back then, the ancient swordsmanship sect had explicitly forbidden the practice of the sword will form sword technique. In fact, it wasn't forbidden, but rather feared. This was because this swordsmanship was too damaging to the body. They didn't know how their ancestors had created this swordsmanship, or how they could withstand the injuries and disabilities that came with practicing it. However, they definitely didn't have the ability to practice it. This was a lesson that countless people had taught them with blood. The swordsmen who practiced the sword will form sword technique were basically physically disabled, and some even had mental problems. In short, without exception, none of them had a good ending. After many attempts by their predecessors, the descendants of the ancient swordsmanship sects no longer dared to touch the ancient sword will form sword technique. They sealed it away and only chose to practice the simplest sword techniques and sword techniques. These most basic things were passed down as a tradition. North Star Hideo was naturally aware of all this, but he had already made up his mind. He wanted to prove himself, and he wanted his son to see that his father wasn't a coward or a failure, and that he could become the true number one. North Star Hideo naturally didn't know what his father had done. All he could sense was that his father had suddenly become more cheerful. He was no longer as gloomy and sullen as he had been in the past. This was a good thing for North Star Hideo. However, the bad news came quickly. One day, when North Star Hideo returned from school, he saw a house full of blood the moment he entered the door. North Star Hideo's head was ringing, and he rushed into the house. Then, he saw his mother holding his father, who was covered in blood, in a daze. Her face was filled with despair. Then, as North Star Hideo looked on in disbelief, she grabbed North Star Hideo's beloved sword, Heartless Pill, and slashed it across her neck. North Star Hideo was only 14 years old at the time. When he saw this scene, he knelt on the ground, looking helpless and desperate. He hoped that everything before his eyes was a dream. He didn't even know what had happened. His family had been eating peacefully in the morning, so how did things turn out like this when he came back at night? North Star Hideo's heart was in a mess. He suddenly remembered something his father had said that morning. "Today, I'm going to compete with IKA again. This time, I'll definitely beat him," North Star Hideo had said, good luck, and gone to school. However, he remembered his father's words clearly. This made Northstar Hideo subconsciously think that his opponent, aka Tezuka, had killed his father during the competition. And because of his father's death, his mother, who loved his father dearly, couldn't bear the pain of parting and chose to follow him. Although it wasn't common for people to die from accidental injuries during a competition in the ancient swordsmanship circle, it did happen occasionally. This was because ancient swordsmanship was a real swordsmanship, not a fancy move. Therefore, there was an unwritten rule in the ancient swordsmanship circle. It was also what his father often told Northstar Hideo. If an accidental injury occurred during a competition, the opponent wouldn't be held responsible, and the family wouldn't be allowed to claim compensation. Otherwise, it would be seen as a permanent withdrawal from the ancient swordsmanship circle, and it would also be a disgrace to the ancestors. Since one had joined the circle, he naturally had to abide by the rules. This rule didn't protect anyone, but the fundamental reason for the existence of ancient swordsmanship. It was swordsmanship that involved actual combat. If this rule disappeared, ancient swordsmanship would be no different from modern swordsmanship. It would just be a series of moves. Therefore, this rule had always been imprinted in the heart of every ancient swordsmanship practitioner. This naturally included Northstar Hideo, who had learned swordsmanship from his father since he was a child. Therefore, Northstar Hideo obeyed his father's teachings. He didn't choose to call the police. Instead, he cried bitterly as he buried his father and mother's bodies in his courtyard. Then, he took his father's heartless pill and went to find aka Tezuka for revenge. Although Northstar Hideo's father had trained his willpower since he was a child, he was only 14 years old when he faced his father's death and his mother's suicide in front of him. The coldness and despair he felt were deep in his bones. However, he still mustered his courage because his father had said that he was the successor of Northstar Itaru. He had to face everything with courage. Although he knew that he might not be aka Tezuka's opponent, he wanted to take revenge. Then, he would use swordsmanship to fight fair and square to avenge his father. Chapter 379. Use swordsmanship to avenge my father. This was the first thought that appeared in the mind of the 14-year-old Northstar Oneblade when he saw his parents die. Under his father's teachings, he knew that the opponent was not responsible for the death of a duel. He did not want to bring shame to the Northstar family's Oneblade style, so he chose not to call the police. Since his father had died in a duel, he would inherit his swordsmanship and use it to avenge his parents. And that was exactly what he did. Holding the heartless pill that his father had left him, he walked towards the dojo of the Aido school. When he stepped into the Kendo pavilion, it immediately attracted the curiosity of many apprentices in the Kendo pavilion. Northstar Oneblade's gaze was cold, and his clothes were stained with blood. Although he was thin, he stood there like a god of death. The inheritor of the Northstar family's Oneblade style, Northstar Oneblade, is here to challenge the dojo master of the Aido school, Ayazuka. Northstar Idao looked coldly at the astonished Sword Pavilion apprentices as he said this. Northstar Oneblade? Hearing this name, the students were all very surprised. This was because this name was too famous in the ancient swordsmanship world. It could be said that he was a genius in swordsmanship, and he had the potential to become the #1 swordsman in the official group in the future. A middle-aged man in a white dojo uniform could not help but frown and say, Northstar Oneblade, don't mess around. You're not old enough to join the official group. The dojo master is not someone you can challenge. I want to challenge Ayazuka. If you don't agree, then I'll admit that the Aido school has surrendered to the Oneblade style. From now on, my status in the swordsmanship world will be lower than the Oneblade style. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's expression suddenly changed. In his eyes, these words were undoubtedly a provocation. After all, the Northstar Oneblade style was the weakest of all ancient sword styles. Every year, in the official ranking competition, Northstar Hideo would always be at the bottom. So, in the eyes of the middle-aged man, asking the Aido style to surrender to the Oneblade style was an insult to their dignity. Northstar Oneblade, are you sure? The middle-aged man's expression became serious. Although North Star One Blade was only a child, these words were already a challenge to the Iaedo school. I'm sure, let Ike Tezuka fight with me. The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with anger, but he still nodded and turned to leave. North Star Blade stood quietly in place, ignoring the curious gazes around him as he waited for Ike Tezuka to arrive. His words were too decisive, and he brought up the competition of swordsmanship schools. Even if he was a child, Ike Tezuka still came. In the face of his father's murderer, North Star Blade didn't say much. He didn't cry or yell like a child. He was so calm that it didn't match his age at all. Under the guidance of the middle-aged sword master, North Star One Blade and Ike Tezuka arrived at a courtyard behind the dojo. Ike Tezuka was a 47-year-old middle-aged man. He wore loose white swordsmanship clothes and had the famous sword Iaijutsu on his waist. He wore wooden clogs on his feet and had a steady aura around him. Compared to North Star One Blade, he was a bit slender. They didn't seem to be on the same level at all. North Star Lord, are you challenging me on behalf of your father? This makes me very disappointed. Looking at North Star One Blade, Juha Tezuka said regretfully. At this time, Ike Tezuka was also very surprised by North Star Blade's arrival. Because it was his father, North Star Hideo, who had an appointment with him, but it was North Star Blade who came at this moment. This made him feel that North Star Hideo had avoided the appointment with him, which was really a coward's move. The disappointment he was talking about was North Star Hideo. To North Star Blade, however, these words carried a different meaning. North Star Blade's face was cold, and he didn't answer anymore. Instead, he pulled out the heartless pill and put on a posture of drawing a sword. Seeing this, Ike Tezuka also pulled out the Iaijutsu in his hand, raised the sword horizontally, and put on a posture of a swordsmanship attack. North Star Lord, I won't hold back in this competition. Think about it carefully. North Star Blade still didn't answer. The anger didn't go to his head. At this time, his mind was abnormally clear. The heartless pill was slowly pulled out of the scabbard. At the same time the sword was pulled out halfway, his figure rushed forward, pulled out the heartless pill, and stabbed towards Ike Tezuka's throat. Huh! Ike Tezuka immediately raised his long sword and slashed down. At this time, North Star Blade's figure was low, and he slid to the left. However, Ike Tezuka's attack also changed direction in the downward slash. Obviously, he had already seen through North Star Blade's attack. He only used 30% of his strength, and then quickly changed his attack. Fortunately, North Star Blade reacted in time and raised his sword to meet the attack. Otherwise, this move would have cut off his head. However, in terms of strength, North Star Blade was obviously no match for Ike Tezuka. With the sound of metal colliding, North Star Blade was smashed to the ground. North Star Lord, you lost. After Ike Tezuka finished speaking, he pulled back his sword and stood in front of North Star Blade. Again, North Star Blade climbed up from the ground with a cold expression. After taking a few steps back, he stood in front of Ike Tezuka again and put on a posture of drawing his sword. Seeing this, Ike Tezuka frowned, but he still pulled out the katana. This time, it was still North Star Blade who launched the attack first, and this sword was still aimed at the throat. Although North Star Blade was extremely talented in swordsmanship, after all, his cultivation time was too short, and he couldn't compare with Ike Tezuka, who had immersed in swordsmanship for many years. He immediately saw North Star Blade's flaw, and he slashed down the katana in his hand, slashing toward North Star Blade's head. However, to his surprise, North Star Blade did not retract his sword this time, and the sword still stabbed straight at his neck. This sword, North Star Blade had the determination to die, to use his own life for revenge. Blood splattered everywhere. Polaris One sword pierced Ikuchi Tezuka's neck as he wished, but Ikuchi Tezuka's sword stopped at the last moment. Cough! The katana in Ike Tezuka's hand fell, and he covered his neck and breathed with difficulty. At this moment, North Star Blade was stunned. He didn't know why Ike Tezuka stopped at the last moment. Why? North Star Blade looked at Ike Tezuka, who was kneeling on the ground, and shouted angrily. However, at this time, Ike Tezuka was no longer able to answer his question. He knelt on the ground with an extremely painful expression. The onlookers of the Kendo gym quickly began to call the emergency number, went forward to help Ike Tezuka up, and began to carry him out. At that moment, North Star Blade did not have a trace of the pleasure of revenge. Ike Tezuka could have killed him, but he retracted his katana, which was an insult to North Star Blade. If you could, why didn't you retract your katana to my father? With a complicated mood, North Star Blade walked out step by step under the angry eyes of all the Ike Kendo Gym's disciples. When he returned to the door again, he saw a number of police cars, and it was surrounded by neighbors. Seeing this scene, North Star Blade was neither happy nor sad, and just walked straight in. However, as soon as he entered the yard, he was stopped by the police. Outsiders are not allowed to enter the scene of a serious crime. I am North Star Blade, the son of the deceased. As soon as his voice fell, all the policemen around turned their eyes to him. After this, he was taken back to the police station for investigation. In the face of the police's inquiry, North Star Blade told the truth. He told the police that his father died in a swordsmanship competition, and his mother couldn't bear the pain and followed him. However, he made it clear that he would not pursue responsibility. The non-prosecution treaty of the ancient swordsmanship competition was protected by the law at that time because it was a historical legacy. Just like the deaths in boxing matches hundreds of years ago, they were all unintentional casualties in competitive contests, and they would be exempted from responsibility. In other words, as long as North Star Blade agreed not to pursue responsibility, then this matter would be finalized. However, the police naturally wouldn't be so perfunctory. They recorded everything North Star Blade said word for word and began to investigate the matter. 3 days later, North Star Blade saw a piece of news. Ike Tezuka, the Ike School swordsmanship master, died. On the same day, he was taken back to the police station again. This time, the police told him 2 pieces of news. First, Ike Tezuka's family gave up on pursuing responsibility for killing Ike Tezuka. Hearing this news, North Star Blade was neither happy nor sad. He had already guessed this result. However, the second news was like a thunderbolt, exploding North Star Blade's head. According to the police's description, through the nearby surveillance investigation, his father didn't go to the swordsmanship competition with Ike Tezuka that day, nor did he leave the house. According to the investigation at the scene, the final conclusion was North Star Blade's father was killed by his mother. As for the reason, the investigation had not yet come to a conclusion. The police asked him if he could provide any clues, or if he found any abnormal reactions from his parents, or if the family relationship was not harmonious, etc. However, at that time, North Star Blade didn't listen to what the police said. He didn't believe that his mother would kill his father. She loved his father so much. Every time she looked at his father, her eyes were so gentle and affectionate. What reason did she have to kill her lover? North Star Blade couldn't accept the police's words, and he didn't want to listen to what they said anymore. He immediately ignored the police's inquiry and ran home alone. At this time, North Star Blade felt that what the police said was a lie. Everything was fake. In his opinion, anyone could kill his father, but his mother wouldn't. Returning home, he rushed to his mother's room and began to rummage through all possible clues. He urgently needed a reason to prove that his parents loved each other. The wedding ring, the flower paper umbrella given on Valentine's Day, the photo in front of the cherry tree. Just as North Star Blade thought, his mother treasured countless memories with his father. All of these were proof that his mother loved his father deeply, and all of these were proof that his mother couldn't kill his father. At this time, a pink diary entered North Star Blade's vision. When he opened the diary, he found that it was full of his mother's thoughts. Most of the first half of the diary recorded the process of her meeting and falling in love with his father. In the latter half, in addition to his father, North Star Hideo, there was another person, and that was his birth and growth. The words in the diary were beautiful, revealing a strong sense of happiness. North Star Blade couldn't help but tear up as he read. However, the next part of the diary stunned North Star Blade. His eyes were filled with disbelief. In the end, there was only fear in his eyes. Everything his mother had recorded proved that the police were telling the truth. Monday, XX month, 2309. Sunny. Hideo drank a lot today, and he seemed to be in a bad mood. I helped him into his room to rest, but he started crying. It was the first time I had seen him cry. I didn't know what had happened, so I asked him. Hideo told me that he had embarrassed One Blade. With such a weakling as his father, One Blade would probably feel terrible about it. I tried to comfort him, but Hideo was already drunk. He didn't listen to me and kept complaining about his powerlessness. At this moment, my heart ached, and I blamed myself for not being able to help Hideo when he was at his weakest. Wednesday, XX month, 2309. Light rain. Hideo's condition was getting worse, and I could feel that he was under a lot of pressure. However, besides the time he got drunk, he didn't tell me anything. I knew that he was afraid that I would worry about him, so he had to bear the pressure alone. However, I felt sorry for Hideo. That was why I decided to go to the shrine tomorrow to pray for Hideo. I hoped that he would be able to pull through. Go for it. Hideo, you're the best. Sunday, XX month, 2309. Sunny. Today was the day of the junior swordsmanship competition. One Blade was as outstanding as ever. He won first place in the junior swordsmanship competition again. One Blade looked exactly like Hideo when he was young. He was so handsome, and I was so proud of him. Tuesday, XX month, 2309. Sunny. I could feel that Hideo's condition worsened after One Blade won first place again. Although he was proud of One Blade, he was also a swordsman. I guess he felt that he had embarrassed One Blade again. How could I comfort him? I suddenly felt that One Blade shouldn't be so outstanding. He was so good in the past. He was so outstanding that he gave his father too much pressure. Tuesday, XX month, 2309. Heavy rain. Today, Hideo came to find me and confided in me. I was really happy. I was really happy that Hideo didn't hide it from me anymore and was willing to share his troubles with me. However, what he said to me scared me. He said that he wanted to practice the ancient sword while swordsmanship. He wanted One Blade to be proud of him. I didn't agree, but Hideo begged me to respect his decision. He couldn't stand being called a weakling anymore. Looking at Hideo's helplessness and hope, I couldn't help but cry. In the end, I agreed because I could see the desire in Hideo's eyes. Perhaps this was the only way to make him pull back. Thursday, XX month, 2309. Fog. Recently, the confident and cheerful Hideo had returned. He had really changed. His previous dejection had been swept away. Now he was so confident. He told me that he had become stronger and stronger. The ancient sword Will's swordsmanship training was really effective. However, I was worried because I knew that the ancient sword Will's swordsmanship was a forbidden technique that his body couldn't bear. I was afraid that something would happen to Hideo. What should I do? What should I do? But I didn't stop Hideo from practicing. It was Hideo's hope, and I didn't have the heart to break it. I didn't want to see him depressed like before. Friday, XX month, 2309. Clear. Hideo told me that he had sent a challenge to Ikegami Tezuka. He was confident that he could win this swordsmanship competition. I was happy for him. I asked God to bless me and let Hideo win this time. After this, I could persuade Hideo to give up on practicing the ancient sword while swordsmanship. Wednesday, XX month, 2309. Clear. Before the competition, Hideo's body suddenly became terrible. We went to the hospital and found that his internal organs were slightly damaged. I was really scared. What had to come had to come. I hoped that he could give up on the challenge against Ikegami Tezuka and recover first. However, Hideo refused. I'm sure I can win this battle. I can't give up. Otherwise, I'll be called a coward. Saturday, XX month, 2309. Clear. On the second day before the duel, Hideo's body condition became worse and worse. Moreover, he seemed to have some mental problems. From time to time, he would hallucinate. However, he endured the pain in front of Ikegami Tezuka. He asked me not to tell Ikegami Tezuka about this. He was a good father, but he shouldn't bear this kind of pain. What should I do? I suddenly felt that I was so weak. I couldn't provide any help to Hideo. I blamed myself so much. Sunday, XX year, 2039. Tomorrow is the day of the duel between Hideo and Ikegami Tezuka. However, Hideo's current condition wasn't good. He was trembling when he walked. How could he hold his sword and fight? I shouldn't go to the duel this time. Otherwise, something bad would happen to Hideo. I tried to persuade Hideo, but he refused again. He told me that he wanted to break the taboo of the ancient sword spirit and break the shackles of his body. He told me that if he succeeded, the sword energy in his body would condense into a sword orb. It wouldn't run around in his body anymore. In other words, he would become a normal person again. However, if he failed, he would be possessed by a demon and lose his mind. I was scared. I asked him what he should do if he failed. He knelt down and begged me. He asked me to kill him if it really happened because he didn't want to tarnish the name of the Ikigami Tezuka anymore. Monday, XX year, 2039. Clear. Today was the day of Hideo's duel. It was also the day that Hideo would try to break the taboo of the ancient sword spirit. I was so scared. I was so scared. Northstar Blade's heart trembled as he read his mother's diary. From the initial happiness and warmth to the final sadness, his mother's change of heart had come from his father. But in the end, it was because of him. He had always thought that he was outstanding. His mother and father were proud of him. However, he had never known that he had brought such heavy pressure to his father. By now, Northstar Blade understood that the police hadn't lied to him. It was his mother who had killed his father. Although his mother still loved his father deeply, it was precisely because of this deep love that she made such a heartbreaking choice to end his father's suffering. In the end, his mother couldn't bear the pain in her heart and chose to follow her father. So, Ikigami Tezuka wasn't the one at fault. It was him. His excellence had caused his father's death. The truth was so bloody that Northstar Blade couldn't help but cry. He was unable to accept this reality. Right now, he hated himself for being so outstanding. If he hadn't brought pressure to his father, none of this would have happened. His helplessness was the truest reflection of his current situation. It was as if the world had turned gray. He lay on the ground and cried bitterly as he hugged his mother's diary. Right now, he was truly like a child. Chapter 380. Now that Northstar Blade knew the truth, the days that followed were dark and gloomy. Swordsmanship, studies, and life. Northstar Blade couldn't find the slightest interest in any of this. He just lived his life in a daze. Remorse and self-blame filled every corner of his life. Just like that, 2 years passed. The ancient swordsmanship circle had basically forgotten about this swordsmanship genius who streaked across the sky like a shooting star. He had already become a thing of the past. During these 2 years, Northstar Blade also fell in love with drinking and smoking. He did everything he could to numb himself. His family's kendo gym also quickly closed down due to lack of care. He left his home, which had left him in despair, and began to wander like a vagabond. No one dared to believe that this unshaven, unkempt man was a youth who wasn't even 17 years old. The sky was his blanket, and the earth was his bed. In the days to come, he was driven away by others and despised by others. He lived like a piece of trash that had been thrown to the side of the road. He had no value or sympathy. Even Northstar Blade himself felt that he had brought all of this upon himself. Thus, he had no complaints about living like this. After learning the truth, all he felt was self-blame. On this day, Northstar Blade continued to wander aimlessly, his eyes hazy with drunkenness. Even he didn't know why he had come to the seaside. The sea breeze blew gently, and the sound of the waves came one after another. The crimson sunset dyed half the sky red. Seeing this scene, Northstar Blade couldn't help but be stunned. He was very familiar with this scene. He had seen this scene in his memory. It was a seaside dinner organized by his mother when his father and mother were still alive. At that time, Northstar Blade was only 9 years old. It was also when he had just come into contact with swordsmanship. He could still clearly remember his father practicing swordsmanship for him at the seaside. It was also from that moment that he fell in love with swordsmanship. His mother pointed at the sea, rubbed his head gently, and told him, "Don't worry, Blade, your heart must be as broad as the sea. Become a man because you will inherit the Northstar family's legacy. Don't embarrass your ancestors." Northstar Blade could still clearly remember how he had nodded vigorously with a red face. At that moment, Northstar Blade's eyes reddened. He missed his father and mother. He missed them so much. As he poured the sake into his mouth and listened to the sound of the waves crashing on the beach, His eyes became hazy from the intoxication. The sound in his ears became more and more unclear, and his vision became more and more blurry. In the dream, he once again relived the moment when his family reunited at the seaside. A rare smile appeared on his tightly shut face. After an unknown period of time, North Star Blade felt an itch on the tip of his nose and woke up from his slumber. Opening his eyes, he saw a woman with a sweet smile naughtily poking at his nose, touching it again and again. As soon as North Star Idao opened his eyes, the woman stuck her tongue out at him and took a few steps back. North Star Blade finally got a good look at the newcomer's face. To his surprise, the woman turned out to be a witch of the shrine. She wore a white robe, a scarlet skirt, a white pouch, and a pair of red-buttoned straw sandals. Her hair was tied up with white sandalwood paper, and she also wore the standard chiseo, outer garment of a witch. Although it was the modern era, the status of a witch was still very noble in Japan because the Japanese witches existed for the gods. Unlike them, the witches of Chi Dragon existed for the people. At the peak of their power, the witches of the shrine were regarded as the representatives of the gods in the human world. They were even called the children of gods, and they were the supreme beings respected by all. Even in the modern era, although the status of a witch was not as glorious as it once was, it was still a symbol, an alternative, noble, in an equal society. "Why are you sleeping here?" the witch asked curiously. North Star Blade didn't answer. Instead, he slowly stood up, picked up the bottle of sake, and staggered toward the town under the witch's astonished gaze. The witch was very surprised to see North Star Blade's attitude. Usually, people around her treated her with great respect, and this was the first time she had met someone who directly ignored her. She couldn't help but pout. She jogged to catch up with North Star Blade and blocked his way. "I'm talking to you." "Oh, what's the matter?" North Star Blade looked at her indifferently and asked, "Well, I might be lost. Can you take me back to the shrine?" The girl seemed to be very embarrassed, and as she spoke, her face became red. "Yes, I didn't sneak out," the girl added in the end, as if she was trying to defend herself. "Not interested." North Star Blade took a step to the right and continued to walk forward. At the same time, he picked up the bottle of sake and drank a mouthful. Then he shook the empty bottle with a regretful look on his face and reached out to throw it on the beach. But before North Star Blade could take a few steps, the girl stopped in front of him again with the bottle of sake in her arms. She said angrily, "You littered. This is yours. Please take care of the environment." After saying that, the girl stuffed the bottle into North Star Blade's hand and said again, "Maybe the way I said it was wrong. Then let's do it again. Hello, my name is Kikyo, a witch of the Yin-Yang Shrine. Now, please take me back to the shrine." Kikyo bowed slightly. North Star Blade was speechless at this moment. He felt that this witch was so clingy. Looking at Kikyo, who was still bowing and waiting for a reply, North Star Blade stretched out his hand and pointed to the right. "Go that way, and you'll meet people. Let them take you back. I think they'll be very happy." Hearing this, the smile on Kikyo's face suddenly stiffened, and then he looked up angrily. "I want you to take me back. I'm not free. I'm going to buy some sake." After saying that, North Star Blade took a step to the right and walked forward. However, he had only taken a few steps when Little Witch stopped him again. "How can you not respect me at all?" North Star Blade ignored her and continued to walk forward, not even bothering to talk nonsense with her. After blocking him a few times, Little Witch was truly enraged. She did not try to stop him anymore, instead following behind North Star Idao, waving her little fists at him with an angry look on her face. After following them all the way into the town, there were more people around. North Star Blade looked back and saw that Little Witch was still following him. She did not ask for help from the people around. But now that there were people around, the anger on Little Witch's face dissipated. She was full of sweet smiles, and from time to time, she would greet passers-by by nodding at them. Although North Star Blade did not know why Little Witch did not ask for help from passers-by, he could not be bothered. He continued walking forward until he reached the town's supermarket and walked in. After choosing a cigarette, North Star Blade went to the checkout counter, but when he took out his wallet, he found that he did not have enough money to pay the bill. Just as he was about to put the cigarette back, Little Witch, who had been following him all this time, suddenly jumped out, holding a note in her right hand, and waved it at North Star Blade proudly. North Star Blade was stunned for a long time by this childish display. He felt that this which was really boring. But at that moment, Little Witch suddenly came to his side, holding the note in both hands and handing it to the cashier. "Big sister, this is to make up for the difference." The cashier was stunned by Kikyo's sweet smile, and she could not help but smile back. After paying for the change and walking out of the supermarket, Kikyo seemed to be very happy. He quickly ran to North Star Blade's side and smiled. "Now that we know each other, can you take me back to the shrine? There are so many people here. Why just me?" North Star Blade asked, puzzled. "Because you look so beautiful when you're asleep. Mother, Lord Oracle said that people with beautiful smiles are definitely not bad people." Hearing this, North Star Blade stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Kikyo. However, he saw the sincerity in Kikyo's eyes, without a trace of falsehood. At that moment, North Star Blade felt his heart wrench. All this time, he had been despised by everyone, but he did not expect that the noble witch would treat him as a good person. "You're wrong. I'm a bad person." After opening the cigarette and lighting it, North Star Blade turned around and continued walking aimlessly. Along the way, the two of them began to chat idly with each other. Although he felt a little helpless, he had to admit that Kikyo was really warm. This was the first time in years that North Star Blade had spoken so much. In the end, facing Kikyo's persistent pestering, North Star Blade chose to compromise, bringing Little Witch to her Yin-Yang shrine on the tram. The moment before leaving, Kikyo once again bowed respectfully to North Star Blade. Then a victorious smile appeared on his face. At that moment, for some reason, North Star Blade suddenly felt that the smile was really beautiful. His heart, which had been sealed in ice for a long time, cracked open. It had nothing to do with love or friendship, just pure warmth. After that, North Star Blade once again returned to his wandering life, but he would often return to the seaside, enjoying the sea breeze, listening to the cries of the seagulls, and reminiscing about the past. Because there was a beautiful past there, but at home, all he could think of was the bloody scene, and he would even wake up from his dreams. It was a sad place, a memory that he did not want to recall. This kind of life passed for a long time. Once again, North Star Blade awoke from his dream at the seaside, and once again saw the little witch Kikyo. North Star One Blade no longer resisted when he saw her again. He just asked, "Did you sneak out again?" "No, I got lost this time." Little Witch Kikyo blushed and tried to explain. After that, North Star Blade would occasionally see Little Witch Kikyo on the seaside, who had lost her way. The flame of friendship was ignited in their hearts, and as they got to know each other, they became very good friends, pure friendship. To Kikyo, everyone around her was incomparably respectful to her, so she had to wear her own noble mask to face everyone. But with North Star Blade, she did not need to. She could be angry, she could be willful, she could be unscrupulous, and she could even laugh without any attitude. This kind of ease was something she had never experienced before. And North Star Blade also felt the warmth that he had not felt since his family left, and he enjoyed this feeling very much. And his originally frozen heart gradually melted. Little by little, he walked out of the darkness that surrounded him and welcomed the beam of light that was Kikyo. This kind of life lasted for half a year, but after that, Kikyo never came to see him again. During that time, North Star Blade was very disappointed, but he knew his identity. He was just a wanderer, and compared to the noble witch, he was like an unremarkable weed on the roadside, not worthy of being a friend at all. But a month later, Kikyo appeared again, which was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise for North Star Blade. But this time, Kikyo looked completely different. She had changed into an incomparably gorgeous witch costume, and her hair was tied up, looking very beautiful, but the rims of her eyes were red. This time, Kikyo came to bid farewell to North Star Blade. Although North Star Blade was disappointed to say goodbye, he didn't want to force the issue. Their friendship was the kind that could break at any time. He was already prepared for it. But North Star Blade wanted to know what happened to Kikyo and why she looked like she was crying. At this time, North Star Blade has long regarded Kikyo as his family. A good friend, he wanted to know the reason why Kikyo was so wronged. Under North Star Blade's questioning, the naive Kikyo told North Star Blade everything that had happened to it. Originally, Kikyo's identity was not only a witch, but also a priestess of the school of Yin-Yang. Although her identity was incomparably noble, she was about to reach adulthood. After reaching adulthood, she would step down from her position as a witch and enter the school of Yin-Yang's underground palace, forever guarding the school of Yin-Yang's ancestral hall, unable to leave. Although North Star Blade heard that after reaching adulthood, this was the first time he heard about guarding the ancestral hall, he couldn't help but be stunned. In Kikyo's view, all of this was the school of Yin-Yang's rules. She couldn't disobey. From the moment she became a witch, her fate was already determined. However, in North Star Blade's view, all of this was bullshit. What era was this, and such pedantic and old-fashioned thinking still existed? He told Kikyo to bravely pursue her own life, but Kikyo shook her head. North Star Blade asked her why, but Kikyo said that she had no choice. The world was not as simple as she thought. North Star Blade could feel Kikyo's helplessness at this moment. Since she didn't want to say, he didn't ask too much, but before she left, he asked, "You don't want to?" In response to this question, Kikyo nodded. The helplessness and disappointment in her eyes were clear, causing North Star Blade's heart to ache. However, he naturally wouldn't just watch Kikyo be imprisoned in the depths of the school of Yin-Yang's underground palace. He personally went to the Yin-Yang shrine and told the priest that Kikyo needed freedom. Regarding his ridiculous behavior, although the priest looked kind on the surface, he didn't take it seriously at all. Facing North Star Blade, who came several times, they finally used the method of expulsion. After all, in their view, North Star Blade was just a vagrant, a dispensable character. North Star Blade didn't give up even when communication was fruitless. He chose to call the police, and even wanted to use the power of public opinion to help Kikyo out of the underground palace. Just as Kikyo said, the world was not as simple as he thought. After calling the police replied that Kikyo was willing, and they had no right to interfere. However, North Star Blade clearly remembered that Kikyo told him that she was unwilling. So how could she be willing? His last hope was the media, but they didn't give him any reply. Although they promised to report this matter, the truth was that they didn't take North Star Blade seriously at all. When they came to find him again, not only did they refuse to mention what they had promised, they even showed him disgust and impatience. This was the reality that Kikyo was talking about. Even so, North Star Blade didn't give up. Since he couldn't rely on external forces, he could only rely on himself. He wanted to personally bring Kikyo out of the school of Yin-Yang's underground palace. After that, North Star Blade, who had been wandering for a long time, returned home again and took out his father's heartless pill. Touching this famous sword again, he didn't feel unfamiliar at all, as if the weapon was an extension of his arm. The moment the blade was unsheathed, it was still cold and incomparably sharp. Chapter 381. One Man and One Sword. North Star Blade returned to the Yin-Yang shrine. He looked completely different from before. His dirty clothes had been changed, and his unkempt hair had been cut short. His unkempt beard had disappeared, and his decadence had been swept away. Now, like the sword in his hand, it shone with a cold, sharp light. The people in the shrine were all too familiar with North Star Blade. Although he had changed his appearance, they still recognized him. They wanted to chase him away, but when they saw the sword in his hand, they were afraid. This time, they didn't dare to step forward. Even the god officials were cowering in a corner, shouting out warnings. However, North Star Blade ignored them. He entered the shrine step by step, heading for the Yin-Yang school's underground palace. He thought everything would go smoothly, but when he reached the underground palace, North Star Blade ran into someone. It was an old woman in black priest robes. When North Star Blade arrived, she only said calmly, "Go back. The Kikyo won't leave." North Star Blade didn't say anything. He unsheathed the heartless pill and pointed it at the priest. This time, however, the priest didn't dodge in fear like the priest. Instead, North Star Blade saw something he couldn't believe. This was an ability that surpassed North Star Blade's understanding. Yin-Yang Technique. A ferocious-looking, armored spirit-branded retainer appeared in her mind. This strange scene shocked North Star Blade to the limit. After that, the priestess didn't attack. She simply asked North Star Blade if he still wanted to fight. Although he was shocked, North Star Blade didn't retreat. Little Witch had pulled him out of the darkness. This time it was his turn. However, the power of a Shikigami wasn't something North Star Blade could resist. No matter how talented he was in swordsmanship, even if he'd once been a genius, in the face of extraordinary power, he was nothing more than a mortal. Without any suspense, North Star Blade lost. He couldn't fight back at all. In the end, he was carried out, covered in wounds, and thrown outside the shrine like trash. After that, North Star Blade disappeared. He didn't return to the shrine for several weeks. However, just as everyone in the Yin-Yang shrine thought he'd given up, he returned. However, North Star's blade was still met with an unparalleled power, and he was thrown out again. It was too much for a mortal to fight against the power of ghosts and deities. This was not a gap that could be bridged with absolute talent in swordsmanship. But even though he failed again and again, North Star One Blade did not give up. Because every time he wanted to give up, he would think of Kikyu, of her waiting for him in the dark underground palace. He could let himself down, but he would not let down Kikyu. After half a year of friendship, he had already regarded Kikyu as his family. Finally, before Kikyu left, he asked not only Kikyu, but also himself. This was his promise to Kikyu, and also to himself. Every few weeks, North Star Idao would come to fight the priestess. His swordsmanship was getting stronger by the day, and he was progressing at a godly pace. This kind of growth potential made the old shaman feel incredulous. From being crushed by the Shikigami in the beginning, to barely being able to resist, and now to the point where he could just about match it. Using the body of a mortal to fight against ghosts and deities, North Star Idao was astounded. What she did not know was that every time North Star Idao left, he would go back to practice his swordsmanship, looking for the seniors of the ancient sword world to learn sword techniques. His sincerity moved many people. Those seniors could not bear to let North Star Idao's excellent swordsmanship go to waste, so they began to teach him swordsmanship and killing moves. Just like that, North Star Idao grew stronger day by day, reaching a new level every day. This was his talent, a sword genius that only appeared once in 10,000 years. During this period of time, North Star One Blade had single-handedly defeated many of the seniors of the ancient sword technique world. In the eyes of the descendants of the ancient sword technique schools, this returning prodigy was undoubtedly going to be the uncrowned king of the official swordsmanship competition in the future. He would reign supreme over the ancient sword technique world for decades to come, and no one would be able to defeat him. But North Star Idao's heart was not here. He wielded his sword again only to give her freedom and nothing else. So to the surprise of all the ancient sword seniors, North Star Idao, who had reached 18 years old, gave up the right to represent Idao in the official group competition. But he did not give up the sword in his hand. This sword was the key to breaking Kikyo's world of darkness. Hard training, challenge. Hard training, challenge, defeat after defeat. More and more scars appeared on his body. North Star Idao never gave up, and after each defeat, he became stronger and stronger. Until one day, in another battle, his heartless pill pierced through the demon Shikigami, turning it into an exploding black mist. He succeeded. To the disbelief of the priestess, he had used the power of the mortal sword to pierce through the obstruction of divine power. At that moment, North Star Idao felt truly satisfied, because he had once again wielded his sword for this moment. But what left North Star Idao in disbelief was that at that moment, the priestess told him, "Kikyo died a long time ago." These words were like a bucket of cold, bone-chilling water pouring over North Star Idao's heart. The joy in his heart was instantly washed away. In disbelief, North Star Idao ignored the priestess obstruction and charged into the school of Yin Yang's underground palace, searching like crazy. In the end, he arrived at a room. The room was empty, but the walls were covered with many pieces of paper. The paper was filled with drawings of two people holding hands as they watched the sun rise and set by the sea. There were also many short stories about the two of them. I really like being with him. It's very stable, very peaceful, very happy. I can't sneak out to see him anymore. I really miss him. What is he doing now? Could he be thinking of me? No, he should just forget about me. Actually, I'm starting to like him a little. Wow, I actually gave birth to a child for him in my dreams today. How embarrassing. Maybe I'm going to die soon. After all, I'm a sacrifice for the Shikigami. But he doesn't know any of this. That's good. After all, the time I was eaten should have been very ugly. Thankfully, he can't see it. Each drawing, each paragraph of text, all of this touched North Star Idao's nerves. Sacrifice. At this moment, North Star Idao finally understood why the priestess had said that Kikyo was dead. It was because she had been used as a sacrifice for the Shikigami. Heartache. Endless heartache. Endless rage surged in his chest. North Star Idao's arrival had already alerted the Onmyoges cultivating in the underground palace. They quickly gathered around. The furious North Star Idao only wanted to kill. But he was only one person. Although he was strong and his swordsmanship was superb, he was still no match for the Shikigami summoned by so many Onmyoges. No matter how many times he swung his sword, he was still no match for them. This was yet another power that he couldn't match. He was seriously injured once again. North Star Idao should have been killed, but the priestess suddenly arrived and saved him. She told North Star Idao not to come here again, or else he wouldn't be able to leave alive the next time. The heavily injured North Star Idao was on the verge of death. He asked the priestess why she saved him, but the priestess said Kikyo is her daughter. At that moment, North Star Idao angrily asked the priestess why she could bear to watch Kikyo be sacrificed to the Shikigami. This is all fate. I am powerless to resist. She is powerless to resist. And you're even more powerless. A sad expression appeared on the priestess' face after she finished speaking. Before she left, she told North Star Idao that he should never think about revenge. The Onmyoges were far more powerful than they were. They were as powerful as gods, and no matter how strong his swordsmanship was, could he fight against a god? With that, the priestess left, leaving behind the dying North Star Idao. Despair was like a demon that had been watching North Star Idao all this time, whispering into his ear, "I will always be by your side." North Star Idao was rescued by a passerby and sent to the hospital. But after he was discharged from the hospital, North Star Idao's original sharpness disappeared once more. The priestess' warning before she left continued to echo in his ears. How could a mortal fight against a god? Even though the priestess was so powerful, there were even more powerful Onmyoges in the underground palace. There were even those who were as powerful as the priestess had said. He had no idea what he should do next. No matter how hard he trained his swordsmanship, he would never be able to fight against the Onmyoges, much less avenge Kikyo. When he returned home, North Star Idao sank into the pain of the past. What's the point of learning this sword? It's because of this sword that my father left and my mother followed. Now I see it as my only hope, but it can't give me the power to take revenge. Then what's the point of learning it? What North Star Idao felt was not helplessness, but pain. He went to his father's room and knelt in front of his father's memorial tablet. He raised the heartless pill with both hands and placed it in front of his father's memorial tablet, intending to abandon the sword. But at that moment, he noticed a book on the table beside his father's memorial tablet. One sword, Taiyuan. He opened the book and a piece of paper fell out. North Star Shiofu. Idao, I knew you would see this book, even though I've never told you about its existence. This is the essence of the one-sword school swordsmanship, but I'm warning you, don't ever learn it. My body is getting weaker and weaker, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Cultivating this demonic sword technique brought me a short period of happiness, but it also brought me endless pain in the future. It's very powerful, but it's a demon that can corrode your body and spirit. Although it once brought glory to the one-sword school, that was only in the past. It doesn't belong to this era. My wrong choice is your best warning. It's a spiritual inheritance, but it's not a taboo that we should touch. Perhaps I'm no longer here after reading my message, but one sword, you must promise me that you will never cultivate this demonic sword.